Avaryss Productions presents an original Star Wars story. Darth Avaryss, the Old Soldier. Written by Grimm. Coruscant, center of the Galactic Republic, the world that had been the seat of power for generations. And now, a world diminished. For the second time it had been crushed under the heel of a distant dictator. The so-called Eternal Throne now held the Republic in its grip, and yet again, the Republic had given up. The soldier shook his head. For the second time in his life, the Republic had surrendered. He was most disappointed, to say the least. He sat in his favorite chair in his 3-room apartment and contemplated his career, a life of war and pain, friends and enemies, and tears of pain and joy. He ran his fingers through his graying dark hair. In truth, he had never expected to live this long. He had expected to die in a flash of light in a blaze of glory. He had served the Republic for almost 30 years, first putting on a uniform at the age of 18. A long time dodging missiles and blaster bolts, too long perhaps. In that time, he had seen 2 wars with the Sith. He had fought in both, first as a fighter pilot, and then as a member of the Republic insurgent team known as Survivor Squad. He and his friends had done much for the Republic, holding back the advance of the Emperor and his Sith Lords, delaying the Imperial war machine, and keeping the spark of hope alive. The soldier had been proud of that. Back then, he had felt like he was making a difference. That feeling ended with the sacking of Coruscant and the treaty that followed. After that, the soldier had been disillusioned for a time, but still clung to his duty. It was all that he had, the only thing he had ever been comfortable with. He had certainly never fit well into civilian life. The old man had made damn sure of that. You're going to be soldier boy. Soldiers don't cry. The old man had been gone almost 10 years now, and still, after all that time, the soldier still heard his voice so clearly. Yeah, Dad, he thought, soldiers don't cry, but they do drink and blame their problems on others. They take their frustrations out on their wife and their children that had nothing to do with what had happened 5 or 6 years before they were born. His father had never understood that. He merely took pleasure in tormenting his wife and children. It was likely the only time the man had ever felt big, and that was only after he drank himself into a haze. The old man had never met a bottle he didn't like, and he had never hesitated to take it out on his family when he got that liquid courage in him. His sister had married to escape the old man's wrath, but ended up finding a guy that was almost as bad. The soldier had helped her get out of that, only to have her make the same mistake with the new guy, repeating the same mistake that mother had. He tried not to take it personal. At least his sister had been brave enough to try marriage. The soldier never had, despite finding someone that might have made him happy. They could have both been happy. Sadly, it was never meant to be. That memory still haunted him. Likely would until the day they carried what was left of him off the battlefield. I'm sorry, Galadriel, he thought. I'm so sorry. He found himself looking at the table in front of him at the bottle sitting there. It had been a gift from General Garza, something from Alderaan, well-aged and expensive. The general had meant well. No one had told her that the soldier didn't drink. He had always feared that, if he did, he would end up just like the old man. That scared him more than a fleet of Sith dreadnoughts. It scared him almost to death. He had done everything in his power to avoid that fate, to be the better man. Strangely enough, he had found that chance in the Republic fleet. It was the one place that the old man had wanted to be more than anything. It was the first place that he had failed. His father had always dreamed big. He had wanted to be more than a mere grunt serving on some backwater. He had dreamed of becoming an officer, either a general or an admiral, an advisor to the powerful men and women of the Republic. The old man had never found that dream. Despite his desires, he always seemed to sabotage himself. Finally, his dream came to end with a bar fight on Chandrila. He was stabbed in the leg by some weak-way thug. The wound never healed properly, and the soldier's father had been forced to take him off his job, his dreams of glory and command forever denied. He, of course, blamed everyone else, including his family. The soldier only knew that because he had gotten curious, and looked at his father's file once. He had grown up hearing how this officer had had it out for the old man, or this bit of bad luck had torpedoed his chances for advancement. In one of the galaxy's greatest twists of irony, the son had managed to gain the position that his father had always desired. As a war hero and a colonel in the SIS, those in power often sought out his advice. It would have driven the old man mad had he lived long enough to see that. He would have been green with envy. He would have likely been so mad that he might even have disowned his firstborn son, not that he had much to offer the soldier in the end. It was funny that he had only reached that point because he had wanted to get away from the old Murglak. The soldier had tried to escape the torment of his home by following the old man's example. He joined the military. Perhaps he even hoped that it would get his father's attention, and maybe even make him proud. It hadn't worked. It never would have. He realized that now. Nothing would have ever pleased the old Hutspawn. Certainly not the actions of his firstborn son. The soldier sighed. He didn't really like these maudlin moments, but he found himself experiencing them more and more as he had gotten older, as he often did at times like this. He pulled out an old sketchbook, the one he had first purchased on Birchest over 20 years ago. He flipped through the pages, looking at the faces drawn there. He could have transferred them to a digital source by now, something holographic perhaps, but he hadn't. These sketches were personal. He had drawn each and every one. These were the faces of his friends, his fellow soldiers and survivor squad. We were so young, he thought as he looked at each one in passing. The flimsy had begun to yellow with age, and to curl up a bit on the edges, but none had faded. He took care of this book, made sure it was secure wherever he had been posted over the last 2 decades. In truth, he had dreamed of being an artist once. He had loved to draw in school, even worked summer jobs over 3 different summers to pay for private art lessons. He had hoped to attend one of the famous art academies on Alderaan, but the old man wouldn't hear of it. He refused to even entertain the thought of it. My son is not going to waste his time drawing pictures. He is going to play sports and go into the military, like a proper man. The soldier frowned. He had done that, played the sports, and signed up, but he had never lost his love of drawing. It had served him well, offering him a calm place to go in the center of many storms. He smiled. It also helped him remember so many faces, people he had known and fought beside. Galadriel had her own section in his book, of course. The way she smiled, the cool way she stood watch on dark evening looking so vigilant. He tried not to pause too long at the more intimate drawings he had made of her. These had been sketched during the height of their relationship. Even looking at them now made his heart ache. You made a choice, boy, his father's voice reminded him. Be a man, and live with it. That is what I'm doing, Dad, he thought, passing the drawings of his old lover. That was exactly what he had been doing. He quickly brushed past Galadriel and turned his attention to the other members of their squad, their faces immortalized in images of coal on flimsy. Most of these drawings had been done during the darkest days of the Galactic War, when the survivors were always getting reinforced. So many friends, he thought morosely. So many dead friends. He remembered them, all those that fell, every one. Some he had known quite well, others had died on their first few missions. He had never really had the chance to call those men and women friends. Yet, the war had dragged on, so many lost, so many gone to try and preserve the Republic. As he reached the final pages, he found himself staring down into the eyes of the last trooper he had lost. Izzy Drogan had been a legacy of Survivor Squad. Her old man had been one of the founders of the Corps, along with the soldier, Galadriel, and 9 more of their friends. They had escaped the Sith together, and rather than be reassigned to different groups had formed one of their own, fighting under the command of a rather unorthodox Jedi Knight. Izzy had hoped to live up to her father's example. She had been a recent recruit to the survivors when they had gone in to destroy an infamous Sith research vessel. The survivors had infiltrated the Shadow's embrace, intent on destroying the vessel before it could be used to weaponize any more viruses and poisons, to deny the Empire its vile fruit. During that mission, Izzy had been exposed to one of those poisons, and there had been no antidote. Though the poison had all but robbed her of her ability to feel pain and use her free will, there had been enough left of the woman to make one final act of self-sacrifice. She had stayed behind when her crew fled. She had triggered the explosives that they had brought to destroy the Embrace. Darth Avaryss, the Sith Master in charge of the project, had been on the ship when it blew. The survivors had hoped she had died with Izzy, but that had not happened. The Dark Lord lived. The soldier hoped to one day pay the Sith back for the life of both a good soldier and the daughter of one of his friends. As he looked down on the sketch of her face, that intense look in her eyes, so like her father's, the soldier's heart nearly broke. "I'm sorry, kid," he murmured. "I'm sorry." After the death of the Sith Emperor, the Republic had seemed to be on the road to final victory, to finally be able to close the book on the Sith and their evil empire once and for all, but then, everything had fallen apart. The forces of the supposed Eternal Empire had emerged from wild space. Their emperor's twin sons had waged a campaign of conquest across the galaxy, even going so far as to destroy the Jedi Knight that had slain the Sith Emperor in single combat. Now, the war was all but over. The Eternal Empire's new ruler had forced both the Republic and the Sith Empire into negotiating a truce. The galaxy had been returned to peace, but it was the peace of the gun, and no one expected it to last. Eventually, the Eternal Empire would lash out again, and the Republic would suffer, innocents would die. The soldier feared that nothing could stop that now. He closed his sketchbook, being ever so careful not to tear a single page. Once again, his eyes drifted to the bottle in front of him, wondering if he had wasted his time all these years. He had always thought that he could make a difference in the galaxy, that they could hold the darkness back and keep hope alive. He sighed. Reality always seemed to intrude on that dream. He had lost so much. He was not sure how much he had left to give. Colonel Chris Capistan. The voice emerged from behind him. He hadn't even realized someone else was in the room. His training took over. He spun with a single motion, drawing a blaster from a holster hidden beneath the table in front of him. Years of living behind enemy lines had taught the soldier to never be far from a weapon. That lesson had saved his life more times than he could count. He now faced the intruder, a weapon in hand, ready to send a killing bolt into the person's head. Not one more step. He shouted, "Let's see those hands, nice and easy." The intruder didn't move. He heard a sigh of frustration. "You don't need that, Colonel," she informed him, and yes, he now could tell it was a she. "I'm here to offer you a proposal." The old soldier, Chris Capistan, glared at her. "Step into the light," he said. "Let me see your face." She complied. He was more than a bit surprised. "I know this one," he realized. Well, I'll be damned. His intruder was a human woman, likely in her mid-30s, pale-skinned with shoulder-length blonde hair. He might have called her beautiful if not for her eyes. He knew those eyes. He had seen them many times. The woman's eyes were golden-flecked with red. They almost glowed in the dim light of his apartment, and if that wasn't enough to identify what and who she was, the lightsaber on her belt was a dead giveaway. Sith eyes, he thought. Wonderful. He shook his head. Wasn't this a surprising turn of events? "Allow me to introduce myself," the woman said. "My name is Lana Beniko." "I know who you are, Sith," he said, still not lowering his weapon. "I still have my security clearance after all." He gave her a cold smile. "May I ask what the Sith Empire's Minister of Intelligence is doing in my home?" A slight smile played across her lips. "I find that my position has changed of late, a state I suspect that you can understand, Colonel." Beniko raised her hand. "You can lower your weapon. You do not need it." Chris grinned. "I may be an old grunt, but my mind isn't that weak, Minister. Please don't try that again." "Good," she said. "Very good. You would be no good for us if you were simply another trooper with a blaster." Chris' eyes narrowed. "I don't serve the Sith," he reminded her. "I won't." If Beniko was insulted by what he had said, she didn't show it. She didn't even draw her lightsaber. "I'm not asking you to join the Empire, Colonel. I'm asking you to help save your people." Chris considered that, what she was saying. He frowned. If the Sith's Minister of Intelligence didn't want him to defect to the Empire, why was she here? I still read my intelligence briefings too, Colonel, she said. I know that you are unhappy with the Republic's decision to accept Zakuul rule for now. I don't blame them, he informed her. The Eternal Fleet has us seriously outgunned. It outguns my people as well, she replied. But being outmatched didn't stop your friends during the first war against the Empire, did it? You fought on, kept us from achieving victory. The Sith woman smiled. I'm not alone in hoping that you could do such a thing again. We cannot fight this threat with force of arms alone. The Eternal Empire must be slowed. You and your friends know quite a bit of doing such thing, don't you, Colonel? He listened to what she was saying. It made sense, but why this? He had been an enemy of the Sith since he was barely in his 20s. Why ask him for help? Why not turn to their special services people? Who is we? He demanded. Who are you working for? Not for, she answered, but with. Neither the Republic nor the Empire can hope to end this threat. Zakuul is too powerful, but if we act together, perhaps we might achieve something unimaginable. In that moment, Colonel Chris Capistan of the Republic military did something he never thought he would do in his life. He lowered his blaster in the presence of a Sith. He was curious about what else he had to say. He rose from his combat crouch and dusted himself off, unhappy with the sound of his knees popping. He shook his head. He really was getting too old for this. You want the survivors to help you? You would be a great help in the coming war, a true asset, she said. And yes, Colonel, the war is not over. So you say, he said, I take it you want me to speak with the others, convince them to sign on to whatever it is you're asking. He shook his head. Most of my old comrades aren't going to believe this. They might, Beniko responded, if you both spoke to them. The old soldier blinked. Both. It was at that moment that the door to his apartment opened. She must have been waiting in the hall. He didn't take his eyes off of Beniko, fearing she might strike at him if he turned. Attacking him had never been her plan. Apparently, the Sith had something else in mind. Hello, Chris, a familiar voice called out. It has been a while, hasn't it? He shivered. Part of him didn't want to believe this. He had barely heard her enter, but that was no surprise. She had always been light-footed and quick. She moved like a damn Phoenix. He wanted to say it was all some Sith trick or lie. Yet, he knew it wasn't. Damn. He turned and there she was. Damn. It had been almost 5 years since they had last seen each other, and that had only been in passing. He had chosen to stay in the SIS. She had chosen to join the fleet, teaching her skills to a new generation of commandos. He sighed. Damn it. Damn. 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 He couldn't deny it. She still looked good. Her gray and blonde hair was pulled up into the ponytail he remembered so well. Her blue eyes still had that old mischievous glint. She gave him that fox-like smile of hers, the one that had always driven him wild. Damn. Hello, Galadriel, he said. It has been a while. Major Galadriel Locke, former member of Survivor Squad, demolitions expert, sniper, and Chris Capistan's former fiancé grinned. You're in, I hope, Flyboy, she said, using the old nickname she had given him almost 20 years ago. These eternal creeps are big trouble. Even the Sithies are scared of them. We are not scared, Lana Beniko said, sounding slightly miffed. But we are concerned. Chris didn't care what the Sith thought of the Eternals. He was still dealing with the fact his former fiancé was here, and willing to aid them. What was the galaxy coming to? Have you talked to the others yet? He asked her, Roxy. Jazz. Are they on board? Master Jazz actually came to me, she admitted. He and Miss Beniko both. She shook her head. That should tell you how serious this is, Flyboy. If the Sith and Jedi are willing to put matters aside for this. He nodded. He couldn't believe what he was hearing, but damn, what was happening to the galaxy? After almost 40 years, he almost didn't recognize it anymore. You are going to do this with or without me, aren't you, Gilly? She shrugged. At least we will be doing something. That is better than simply sitting around and waiting for the Eternals to come and wipe us all out. He snorted with amusement. She had a point, but she is going to do this whether you want her to or not. He frowned. If he said no, and later heard she had been killed, he doubted that he would be able to forgive himself. He had failed to save Izzy. If he lost Galadriel too. He looked at the two women, one a former lover and ally, the other a hated enemy. What choice did he have? Enemy of my enemy was, what? A friend. An ally of convenience. He shook his head. It was time to find out. Okay, Sonner, he said, using Galadriel's old nickname. She hadn't used it in years, but she smiled when she heard it again. He was the only person who ever used it and didn't make it sound like an insult. It was simply a part of her. A part of the woman he loved. That was enough. He turned to the Sith. So this is an alliance then. The beginning of one, she said. He nodded again. Damn. Okay, Sith, he said, not believing what he was saying. One last time, he thought. One last battle. He smiled. I'm in. A Savage Heart, Shyra's Tale. Part 1. The Burning. There is no emotion, there is peace. There is no ignorance, there is knowledge. There is no passion, there is serenity. There is no chaos, there is harmony. There is no death, there is the Force. She repeated those words over and over as she meditated. Through the words, the mantra of the Order, she hoped to find peace and the control of a Jedi. Shyra Veal took a deep breath and let it out through her nose, seeking to ignore the burning in blood, the quickening of her own heart. A low growl escaped her throat. She couldn't help it. It was almost time. The time she dreaded more and more, and as she had gotten older, it had come upon her more and more. Desire. Need. Passion. She sank her teeth into her lower lip, hoping the pain would center her again. Alas, she found no relief. She could feel it, the gathering heat. The heat which made her blood burn, not with rage, but... No. A whimper escaped her lips. There was no passion. There was serenity. She felt her face trying to change, her long human features shifting towards a more lupin shape. No. She was a Jedi. A Jedi. There was no passion. There was serenity. There was only serenity. She shivered, trying to ignore her senses. She could feel them not just through the Force, but with the animal instincts she had been born with. The men who lived in the temple, her fellow Jedi. They were. They could grant her release. All they needed to do was growl. No. There was no passion. There was only serenity. She could do this. She could control it. She was no animal. She was a Jedi. There was only one thing that would grant her relief, yet it was not possible. It had never been possible. How could one find another of their kind to release their passions, when that one was literally a race of one? Shyra was alone in the galaxy. None other of her kind existed, created by a madman, born of merciless Sith alchemy. She had not been born, but created. Her existence had begun as a series of numbers and letters. Experiment 5, VAT 1 to 3L. Her entire life had been a fight to rise above that simple designation. She was no mere experiment, she was a person. She still fought to get others to see that. Yet, she had to admit that her creation had been something of an abomination to the Force. It was through the dark side that she had first taken form, her body created out of the mind of a maniac. It was not an easy origin to accept. Shyra should never have existed, and yet, she did. A being born of alchemy, marked by great evil, but not ruled by it. There were many Jedi here on Tython that didn't believe that she deserved to be in the Order, that her being able to complete her training was an impossible goal. She endeavored to prove them wrong. She was no mere animal or monster. Whether her creator had intended it or not, she existed in the Force, could understand it, and understood what she was. I think, therefore I am. She was sentient, she had a spirit, her master had told her so, it called out to her through the Force. That was how they had found Shyra in the first place. That is how the masters knew she had needed help. She was grateful to her rescuers. She was both grateful and strong in the Force. In the end, she had made a choice. She would become a Jedi, and she would not let the urges of her blood stop her. She would master these feelings. She would be free. She sought out the light again, tried to anyway. For now she could still touch it, draw on its strength to keep her here, in the here and now, where she belonged. She trusted in the living Force. It would give her the strength she needed. There was no passion. There was serenity. She would find serenity. She dug her thick claws into the mat she knelt on. The burning had not even reached its crescendo yet. Another week, maybe 2, then the desires would begin to level off. In the meantime, she needed to stay focused, stay away from other beings. She didn't trust herself in such a state. She was too quick to anger, too quick to seek blood, gratification of the hunt. The hunt, it offered some release, but it was not the same as finding another. Besides, the Jedi looked down on such practice. Killing to slake her passions would not be accepted. She knew that much. Yet, to find someone else, someone not afraid of what she was, that was impossible. She knew that to be true. But, if she could have, if another agreed to be with her, to aid her in this, that would free her, but again, she could not. Passion was forbidden. She knew that when she joined the Order. When Masters Jazz and Vay had freed her from Tarek's ship, the Shadow's embrace, when she had first exploded from the growing vat using the Force. She had been lost, a creature of base instincts that overwhelmed her intelligence. No, not a beast, but a pup, too young to understand what she was, and why she had been created. She would have been her creator's personal killer, a weapon of war. The Jedi should have killed her. She was a creature of the dark side, but they had not. They had sensed something in her. Master Jazz had felt it too. You can be more, youngling, Master Jazz had promised. You can't do more. She had wanted to believe that, to believe the ones who had rescued her. Back then, she had not known about the burning. It would be almost 5 years before she would feel it for the first time. That first cycle had been the most terrifying for her, not knowing what was going on, not knowing how to control it. She had nearly killed another Padawan in training. Master Vay had needed to restrain her, using the Force to make her fall asleep. The Jedi healers had examined her. They had discovered what it was. While they kept her in restraints, they had told her what had happened. They explained how she was a child of many worlds, many species. Tarek had combined traits of some of the most passionate beings in the galaxy to create her. Human, Shistavan, and Cathar. They even suspected a bit of Wookiee DNA had gone into her, all merged to create a hound of the dark side, a monster of pure savagery. She had held that beast in check for so long, studying the Jedi way, but when her blood was up, when the burning came, it had nearly overwhelmed her that first time, and many times since. She had done her best to rise above such a fate, but the burning remained. It had been easy when she had been a youngling. The burning hadn't started until she entered what the humans would call adolescence. She was, by human reckoning, 19 standard years old now, a young adult. Adulthood had brought the burning fully into a bloom. It frightened her, not just the savagery it brought out in her, no. But how deeply it affected her, it drove the realization home more than anything. She was alone in this galaxy. She might have had her Jedi brothers and sisters, but they were not like her. She was a species of one. None could understand. She was alone. Their blood, it didn't burn. Lucky them. The healers had done their best for her. They sought many solutions. There were precedents in her case. Several of the species they described dealt with the matter of a life cycle, a mating cycle. There were solutions the Jedi healer assured her, chemical concoctions and injections that could slow the burning in her blood. They could soothe the beast. She had tried them all during her earlier periods, but had found them wanting. Her blood naturally resisted them, the Force burning them away, and not letting them take effect as they should. Another gift from her creator, perhaps, something to prevent her from ever taming the beast within. She had no way of asking him about such things now. Darth Tarek was dead. He had been slain by the witch, that Darth Avaryss. Shyra growled, the Sith's face springing to mind. Tarek had needed to die. He was out of control, and mad beyond reason. Shyra would have liked for the Jedi to have captured him, then, under interrogation, he could have told her everything, answered any question of what she was. Yet, he would never have submitted to that. She knew that from their final confrontation, their duel. Finn and Avaryss had been there too. They had heard the man's crazed ranting. She growled even now, remembering his face, and the face of the young Sith that had destroyed him. Avaryss, Darth Avaryss she had become. They had been enemies from the first moment they had seen each other. Too much alike, her master believed, both drawn to the dark side against their will, or tricked into it as in Avaryss' case, or so the SIS report said about the young lord. In the years since their first meeting, rivalry had increased, each encounter filling them with a mutual desire to destroy each other. Avaryss had killed people that Shyra had liked, good people she had come to respect. She had done this to taunt her. The newly minted Dark Lord was cruel beyond reason. She slew those that Shyra thought of as friends, as she had done on Voss, where their final duel should have happened, and ended in the witch's death. Do not let this become personal, Padawan. Vay's voice, her master's voice, ever the voice of reason, echoed through her mind. Shyra tried to focus on it, tried to remember her duty, the commitment she had made to the Jedi Order. It was not right to seek to destroy another being, no matter how much they disgusted you, their greed and lust for power all-consuming. The witch was no better than Tarek, and she looked down on Shyra, called her a mongrel, seeing only an animal. She growled again. No. The burning was no time to think about the witch, any enemy. It made the flame burn that much hotter. If she could not find release, she would need to seek out blood, and that would not do either. Either death or desire could lead to the dark side, and Shyra, she would never walk that path. Never. The chime on her door rang. The beast woman cringed. No. She was not fit for guests, not fit to see anyone. She was struggling if they should say something that angered or provoked her. She didn't know what she was due. Chime. Go away. She regretted the words as they emerged from her mouth. That was not what was expected of a Jedi. Why couldn't they leave her alone? The blood was rising, the burning only just beginning. They had to know. The council had to know. Why could they not simply leave her alone? The door opened, and her master's presence filled the chamber. Shyra took a shuddering breath. She welcomed the sensation, the light within her master burned so bright. It was warm, soothing. It held the burning at bay. Praise the Force. The small Jedi Master looked around her chamber. Seeing the damage she had done, the claw marks on the wall, the torn cushion shredded in impotent aggression. She smiled upon her student. You seem to be doing better, young one. The damage is not as bad as it has been in the past. Shyra snorted, part in amusement and part in frustration. She rose and looked down upon her teacher. Smaller in stature, but so much more in power. So much more than Shyra Veal could ever hope to be. Vaylo didn't look like your typical Jedi Master. Some young student of the Force might have even mistaken her for a fellow Padawan. Her pale skin remained youthful, her stature what one might expect from a human that had not yet seen 15 years of life. They would be wrong. Vay was ancient, ageless, the last Padawan of the fabled Jedi Outlander, who had perished a millennia ago during the Great Sith War. No one could say for sure how old Vaylo was, but it was clear that she had seen a millennium and a half of life already. She looked like she might live to see a millennium more, maybe two. The Force was strong in her, very strong. May the Force be with you, Master, Shyra said, offering a bow. And with you, my troubled Padawan. Shyra winced. Troubled. That was an understatement and a half. Is there something you need, Master Vay? She asked. I fear that I am not good company at the moment. Vay gave her a sympathetic look. Have you taken your injections today? I have, Shyra promised. They help, somewhat, take the edge off the burning, but it is not perfect. She shook her head. I fear this cycle will be the worst one yet. and it has only just begun. Shyra began to pace. I know that I need to stay here. I would be a danger outside these walls, of this planet, but I still cannot help but feeling confined. I don't like it. I want to be out, filling my senses with the Force, and seeking out. She whimpered. This will not be easy, but I will prevail. The Force is with me. Her master nodded. That I do not doubt, Shyra, but staying here. I don't think it is what is best for you right now. Her master smiled again. I have a mission for you. Shyra's brown eyes widened. Master, I can't. The burning will not plateau for a few weeks. What I ask will not take long, and there is some risk involved. Such a challenge, focusing on protecting others, will help with your condition, I think. You did say that combat did help keep you centered. Yes. Shyra nodded. Still, she wasn't sure. If she went out in the open. If she lost control. Yet, Master Vey had been her mentor and friend for years now. Her savior and greatest supporter. She wouldn't disobey or second-guess her. She felt that Shyra could do this. It would be done. What would you wish of me, Master? The smaller Jedi nodded, radiating with satisfaction. A friend of mine has come to me seeking help. He finds himself under threat from powerful enemies. You seek for me to protect this friend. He has many guards and allies. They will see to his protection while I deal with the threat at its source. Your task will be to ensure that another is not harmed. Another. A friend or family member. A family member, his son, in fact. A child. A boy. A young man. A human. Shyra suppressed another whimper. A son. A young man. They expected her to be around an adult human male during the time of her burning. What if she lost control? What if she tried to harm him? She was not sure about this. Her master again picked up on her worry. As I said, this matter will not take long. A few days at most, your injections should help you stay centered until this problem is concluded and the danger has passed. Again, Shyra nodded. Master Vey had never steered her wrong, not once. She had faith in her master and in the Force. If Vey believed she could do this, she could. She would do this. There was no such thing as try. Who is the one that I'm being sent to protect? He is the son of Raxus Antilles, the senator from Chandrila. Shyra nodded. She had heard the name. He was involved in the negotiations to bring Alderaan back into the Republic. The son's name. The young man's name is Dr. Court Antilles. Shyra nodded. Court Antilles, she thought to herself. He would be protected, both from his enemies and the burning in her blood. She would not allow him to come to harm. She would do her duty. He would be kept safe. What have you done now, father? Court Antilles shook his head as he turned to latest report from today, a family of Rhodians suffering from scale rot. He would need to place an order for antibiotics from supply. The fourth such request this week. His clinic here in the lower levels never seemed to have enough supplies, and he suspected why. He turned back to the holo again. The half-meter-tall image of his father projected atop his desk. Why couldn't the old man understand? Court would never be what he wanted him to be. What I have done, or not done, is irrelevant, the old man said. Your life is in danger down there, son. You need to leave that place now. Court snorted dismissively. Danger is common enough down here, father. The lower levels aren't the safest neighborhoods here on Coruscant, but there is a sense of community here. Only outsiders don't respect that. Court gave his father a cold look. Is there a reason an outsider would seek to cause trouble for me now? The senator didn't respond, nor did his son expect him to. This was the way things were between them. It had been like this since mother had passed away. I wish you would finally abandon this flight of fancy, son. The risk, it isn't worth it, Raxus Antilles said. The man was large, burly, despite his advancing age. He still carried himself with the presence of the soldier he had been 20 years earlier. His exploits ensuring his first campaigns for public office had been met with grand success. Court had never shared his father's ambitions, or his size. He was a far more slender young man. While his father had excelled in athletics in his youth, Court was far more bookish. He was still in shape, but nowhere near as intimidating as his father. He had also inherited a slight visual problem through his mother's bloodline, causing him to need to wear glasses. It was a rarity for one living in the core worlds, for one of such wealth anyway. There was no treatment, but he didn't let it bother him. Corrective lenses were a small price to pay for being able to carry on in his job. He was an only child, though, and that was something of a problem, as far as his father was concerned. The young Antilles never shared his father's vision of the future. The senator, despite having a good heart, had the reputation of being something of a bully, at least where it concerned the causes he believed in. He was like a cat-hound working a bone. Court's choice of future was the current bone that he was chewing on. The young man didn't like it. "This is no flight of fancy, Dad. It is my work. It is what I want to be known for, the legacy that I will leave behind." Raxus frowned, the same disapproving look that he had worn often during Court's childhood. "I can respect that, Court, but seriously, a doctor. Mom was a doctor, remember. That is how you two met." "I know that, all too well." The old man's expression turned slightly, softened. Maria Antilles had been a good woman, too good for Raxus, some might have said. The senator's expression hardened again, the softness passing like a cloud on a bright day. "There are so many doctors in the galaxy, son. So many trying to help. And still more are needed," Court reminded him. "If there weren't, the lower levels wouldn't look as bad as they do." "My point exactly, son. You desire to help, and I respect that. And you could do far more at my side than you do now. Come up level with me, join my staff. There are positions that I can get you into. Positions that will make it easier for you to run from my seat one day." The older man smiled. "We could build a dynasty together, help so many." Court shook his head. "Politics are your arena, Dad. The operating room is mine. I'm a far better doctor than I would be a politician." "How do you know? Have you even considered trying?" Court frowned. And there it was, the old argument again. At 12, Court had shown an aptitude for medical service. He had done decently in his studies in the legislative youth program, but had never enjoyed it. It was all too self-indulgent for his taste. So, he had pushed forward with his interest in medicine. His schooling had catered to that skill. At 16, he had caught the attention of Roxana Tag, war hero, and one of the most well-known doctors and biochemists in the galaxy. She had known his mother, and had been more than willing to help her son. She had sponsored his early entry into the medical program at the university, and mentored him ever since. He was grateful to Dr. Tag. She knew what it was like to go off on her own, make her own way. Court liked to think it would have made his mother proud. Both his mother and father had come from wealthy families. Raxus had born into a fishing business, one of the most profitable on Chandrila. Though he had chosen a military life, before making the jump into politics. His mother's family had made their wealth in the creation of medicines and vaccines. Their work had saved lives of many throughout the core and beyond. Yet, it was not her way to sit idly and count credits. Maria had used her trust fund to finance many independent clinics on Coruscant, but even that had not been enough for her. She preferred a hands-on approach, and worked in many of such clinics over the years, clinics like the one he ran now. In his younger days, he had spent a lot of time at his mother's side, volunteering at those clinics. When she had fallen ill, he had continued her work. It was what she would have wanted. Dad had been against it, of course. He believed that his wife had contracted her illness from slumming in the lower levels and developed a distaste for aiding those down below. That distaste had grown into actual prejudice when Maria had passed on. Court had mourned her, but had still chosen to remain below, helping others, as she had wanted. That was her legacy. He didn't want it to end because of fear and prejudice. His mother would never have wanted that. He didn't want that. Court himself was quite wealthy. His mother had left him much in her will, many shares of their family's medicinal dominion, and his own trust was nothing to sneeze at. Though it was limited by his age, he was only 20. It would be another year before he could gain full access. When that happened, he intended to branch out, help more people. His father would have disagreed. "I'm very busy, father," Court finally said. "If you don't tell me what is going on, I will need to get off this line." Raxus Antilles frowned. "As I said, your life is in danger. The negotiations with Alderaan have reached an impasse. Several of the noble houses do not wish the reunification with the Republic to succeed." "How does this affect me?" Court asked. "I have no interest in politics." "Because you are my son," the old man reminded him. Court resisted the urge to roll his eyes. "No kidding. The nobles seeking to stop my negotiations have contracted several dangerous people to ensure that I withdraw from the matter. Son, they have reached out to the Zug family of Duro. The Zugs are hired killers, and they know about me and my family." "You're not type to leave yourself open to such enemies, Dad. Why have you not dealt with this matter? I remember some of your exploits during your first term. Surely you know people who can deal with this matter at the source." "Steps have been taken, but in the meantime, you are in danger. I still think it would be better if you would stop all this free clinic nonsense and come home. Your skills could be of use in so many different ways. Many of my friends have asked about you and why you are not at my side. Many of them have comely daughters, young women who would offer us much, many new opportunities with such a union." Again, Court resisted the urge to roll his eyes. His father had hoped to trap his son in an arranged marriage years ago, as was the custom since the early days of Chandrila. His mother had resisted, though she had come from money. Her family had not been of one of the higher classes. She had grown up viewing the practice as barbaric. "When our son marries," she had told her husband, "it will be with someone he loves, as we did, dear husband." Raxus had accepted that argument at the time, but with his wife gone, it had come up again, and again, and again. Court had no time for relationships at present. He had had girlfriends in his younger days, but they had been fleeting. It was his work that excited him. He had chosen to remain focused on that. "Your life is in danger," his father repeated. "Despite your stubbornness, I will not leave you to suffer and die, killed by rabble in the lower levels." "I won't accept one of your security teams, father," Court said flatly. "My greatest protection down here is that I'm accepted as one of the people that live on the street. If the people here start seeing signs of wealth, they might get the wrong idea that I'm not one of the, but a mark to be seized and fleeced." Court sighed. "I would be finished. Your enemies down here would multiply, and I will not allow that." Raxus's frown deepened. "There will be no security team. I have called in a favor from an old friend, a Jedi master I met during the war. She had agreed to send her Padawan learner. This Jedi will act as your protector and bodyguard. A fierce fighter, from what my old friend says." Court considered that. A Jedi. He had heard much about the Order, though he had never spent any time with one. It was said that they were not just guardians of truth, but servants of life. He found himself intrigued. He had read tales of Jedi healers. They were said to know much about curing people, and had access to knowledge that even the finest hospitals on Coruscant did not possess. He smiled slightly. Hopefully, this Jedi would not be a simple thug with a lightsaber. He might just be able to help more people, gain some knowledge, and, who knew, the two of them might become friends. He nodded thoughtfully. "If that is the way it must be, then it must be father. I accept." His father's posture relaxed, grateful that his son had seen some sense at last. "I would ask you to come up level to meet with your protector, but I know that will not happen. I will give Vay your address. You can expect your guardian to arrive in a few days. Try to keep a low profile in the meantime." Court nodded. There was not much lower than this neighborhood, he thought. Though, he would ask around before he closed up for the night, see if any of his neighbors had seen any strange Duros skulking about. Despite what his father thought, Court was not stupid. He knew when to take cover when the blaster started firing. "I will be here, Dad," he promised, "and I will be careful, and I will ask that you be careful too." His father smiled. "You worry about me." Court shrugged. "I may not agree with everything you do, but that doesn't mean that I don't care. Be safe, Dad, and watch your back." "I will," the old man said. "Thank you for this, son, and remember what I said, and trust your protector." "I will, Dad," he promised. "I will." Part 2. The Droid and the Fool. The human wasn't taking this seriously. Shyra growled as she kept to the shadows outside his private clinic. She watched with both her eyes and through the force as the various creatures walked, crawled, and slithered in to see the doctor, seeking either advice or medical attention. The Padawan sighed. This was not what she had expected when her master asked her to take on this mission. She had met with Senator Antilles, and he had explained everything to her. The negotiations with Alderaan, the involvement of the Zug crime family, and his own son's stubbornness. Shyra had not been concerned. She had assured the senator that, whatever the problem was, she and Master Vay would be able to handle it, to end this threat in no time at all. It was with that thought in mind that she had descended to the lower levels, seeking out his son. Looking back, she realized she should have taken the senator's warnings far more seriously. Court Antilles was a difficult man, to say the least. She had been surprised during their first meeting. His father had been a mountain of a man, his size and personality hinting at the soldier he had been. His son was different, slender where the father had been muscular, soft-spoken, where the older Antilles had been boisterous. The first time she had looked into his eyes hidden behind the lenses of his glasses, she realized that her mission would be far more difficult than it should have been. The younger Antilles was not interested in making her task easy. If anything, he seemed determined to hinder her. He seemed to resent her presence, even though her only desire was to keep him safe. The situation, everything about it was frustration in its purest form. She would have preferred a more aggressive assignment, at least. Then she would have something to hit. Alas, she could not hit Antilles as much as she wanted to. She was sworn to protect him. If only he would let her do her job. More people made their way into the clinic. Again, she reached out with the force, sensing no deception or ill intent. She let them pass without revealing herself, as the young man had instructed. She shook her head. He took too many risks. She hoped that his behavior would not serve as the signing of the young man's death warrant. Though she was confident in her abilities to sense danger, she didn't like the fact that Court Antilles insisted that she not remain at his side, and she certainly didn't like that he exercised no caution whatsoever in dealing with the stream of patients coming here at all hours of the day. He was reckless, she thought. Reckless and a fool. How could she keep him safe like this? It was as if he wanted to be kidnapped or killed. After their initial introduction, he had insisted that she remain outside his clinic. The people living down here survived and thrived based on their own code of doing things. A Jedi, even a Padawan, was not a welcome sight down here. Many in the lower levels considered Jedi servants of the elite and went out of their way to avoid them. That admission surprised Shyra. The Jedi served the Republic and its citizens, did they not? Why would they not take comfort in her presence if they had nothing to hide? She found it hard to believe that most viewed a Jedi in their midst as more of a problem than a solution. Even in the age where the Sith Empire threatened the very existence of the Republic, there were those that still thought the Jedi as nothing more than pawns of the Senate. It seemed that the young doctor shared such views. In other words, he didn't think he needed her help, and that her very presence was making any threat on his life more certain. Reckless, she had thought. Reckless and foolish. The young man was asking for a bad end. She leaned back, sitting on her haunches, her claws flexing beneath her robe. She took a cleansing breath and repeated the Jedi code for the 23rd time this day. She was not used to be among such crowds. They made her antsy at the best of times, and now was definitely not one of the best of times. She felt like she wanted to jump out of her own skin. The burning in her blood remained, even with the 2 injections she had taken this morning. They kept her centered, mostly, but mere chemicals could not still the desires in her completely. The smells and sounds of this place filled her senses, making her weak. The presence of so many males drew her attention, seeking to distract her from her duties. She tried to keep her eyes on the window of the clinic, catching glimpses of the doctor at work. She tried to remain focused on him. The fool, she thought. The handsome fool. She placed her large paws on the ferrocrete before her, digging them deeply into the street, gouging at them with her claws. She had come to desire to see the young man at work. It reminded her of her duty, but, at the same time, she shook her head. He was not without his own appeal. She tried not to think about that. It was just the burning talking. Urges of her flesh had no power over her. So she found him attractive, so what? Her will and soul belonged to the Order. She was committed to the Jedi Code. There was no emotion. There was peace. There was no passion. There was serenity. She licked the roof of her mouth. It had gone dry again. Another side effect of the burning. Court Antilles appeared in the window again, her eyes drawn to him. I can do this, Shyra thought. Master Vay knows that I can do this. She sniffed the air. Even from here, she could catch a hint of his smell. The doctor smelled of colto and healing herbs, a pleasant enough smell, but beneath that, she could feel it, his maleness. She shook her head. She pushed her instincts back down. You can do this, Shyra. You will do this. There is no such thing as try. She nodded gamely, her claws digging into the ground beneath her feet. There was no try. Court had just finished attending to a young Ithorian when his eyes drifted to the window. Despite her promise to be discreet, he could still see her there, the Jedi. He shook his head. She was not what he had expected. She had introduced herself as Shyra Veal, a Padawan of the Jedi Order, and a consular in training. Upon their first meeting, he had been curious to say the least. As a doctor, he had seen many species here on Coruscant. The lore of the core drawing many beings from throughout the galaxy. This Jedi, he had never seen anything like her before. Her long, solemn face, large brown eyes, and figure suggested that she was human, but the large, muscular hands, feet, and claws hinted at something more exotic. Something new, perhaps, a new species that the Jedi had discovered after their resettlement off of Coruscant. Or maybe, a being of mixed heritage. A creature born from two different humanoid species. If so, incredible. It was rare that such unions occurred, but there were records of such rare births. The scientist within him was immediately intrigued. Most beings of mixed species didn't survive long. Their mortality rate was quite high. Those that did manage to reach maturity tended to live solitary lives. They were often shunned by either of their parent species. One such being, strong in the Force, might have attracted the attention of the Jedi. They may have offered this girl's parents a chance for their child to have a life of note. It was also possible that the parents may have been slain during the war, and the Jedi had claimed Shyra as an orphan. After decades of war with the Sith Empire, many young Jedi had been taken in for that reason, or so the Holonet report said. Regardless, Court Antilles was intrigued. He had offered, politely, to examine her, a quick checkup, just to make sure she was well after her travels. It was standard procedure for one having arrived from off-world, and such an exam would also give him a chance to get a closer look at her. It might have seemed strange, forward, but new species fascinated him. She had glared at the mere suggestion of it. She had refused him outright. The Jedi representatives had already cleared her at the spaceport, and the look she gave him, it was of pure disgust. He had not pushed the issue. He had meant well, though he supposed she might have misinterpreted his suggestion. He let the matter drop. He didn't want the girl to think him some drooling lecher. The Jedi had immediately launched into a list of things he would need to do, just until the danger to his person had passed. He had thought it better that they discuss things. Surely matters were not as bad as all that. I'm here, the young Jedi had said. If things weren't in a bad way, I wouldn't be. She had given him cold look. You must trust my judgment, Doctor. It is the only way to keep you safe. She had all but ordered him to close the clinic, to only see patients by appointment. She said she would remain at his side, screening any who came in. The people that were after him were dangerous and cunning, and they had no qualms about harming innocents to get what they wanted. Court had listened, but had refused most of her requests. The girl, didn't understand. This was not some Jedi temple or up-world hospital where a droid could tend to even the most minor of burns with a day's worth of care. Things were hard down here for the people that called these streets home. They had little and deserved so much more. The lower levels, life here, it fostered a strong sense of community. It had taken him months to be accepted, and even then, it had only been because his mother's face had been known here. An outsider would not find it easy to sneak up on him. Warnings of outsiders were sent to all businesses on this block. His datapad had dinged the moment the Jedi had entered the district. People looked out for each other down here. His neighbors watched out for him, and he, in turn, watched out for them. He tended their sicknesses and wounds with no thought of reward. He would not turn them away just because it made things easier for her to watch out for a threat that likely wasn't even going to materialize. No, he couldn't do what she wanted. He wouldn't. She had accepted, but had promised to remain close. She gave him a light pen to keep her alerted of any trouble within his clinic. If anything suspicious happened, he would flash it out the window and into the alley. She would see it and be at his side in moments. He accepted that, though he still thought this whole cloak and dagger thing was ridiculous. "You need not worry, Doctor," she said. "My master will deal with this matter quickly. My presence here will be unnoticed and short." Court had nodded, but again his curiosity was piqued. This strange young woman, this Jedi, seemed so detached. He could tell that she didn't want to be here, likely resenting the thought she had to babysit a senator's offspring. She was also so cold, so professional. Normally that would impress him, but it did not fit what he had heard about the Jedi. Jedi were said to be compassionate, champions of truth, and the defenders of justice. The Jedi should have been more open to the plight of the people in this district. Instead, they had sent a droid. She was so cold that any water that fell on her head likely would have turned to ice. She was so standoffish, like it hurt her to be around people. Such opinions would not work for someone in the Jedi Order, would they? During one of his glanced out the window, he had thought he had caught her injecting something into her neck. Again, he was curious. As far as he knew, Jedi didn't engage in the use of controlled substances. Of course, if she was a creature of mixed species, those injections might serve some type of medical purpose. Some DNA didn't combine right in hybrids. They sometimes require enzyme injections, or the introductions of nutrients their bodies were unable to create themselves. Again, he wished there was a polite way to get her to consent to an exam. He remembered what he had thought when he had first seen her. Some might have called her features plain, by human standards, but she moved with a grace that drew his eye. The large brown eyes, flecked with gold, were lovely. His first thought when he had seen her, magnificent. He had quickly dismissed such thoughts. A Jedi was not someone to be ogled. Besides, once his father's allies dealt with whatever problem he had created, he would likely never see the Jedi again. Any question would go unanswered. He would have to come to terms with that. Ping. He looked down at his datapad, an update from someone in the district. He picked it up. 4 Muladdi pilgrims were seen entering the neighborhood. Court's brow furrowed. Muladdi were a strange species. They had hidden themselves beneath heavy robes and masks, and rarely left the confines of their temples in Sector 3. For 4 to be this far away, and not heading in the direction of a spaceport was strange to say the least. They usually preferred the company of their own kind, the elect as they called themselves. He had almost discounted the report, but he raised his light pen and went to the window. It was likely nothing, probably was nothing. Still, he had given the Jedi his word. He signaled to her, not the "get in here now" signal, but the one of something suspicious. 3 quick flashes emerged from the alley. The Jedi had received his warning. Court sighed and got back to work. A female Aqualish was having trouble with her left mandible. He would need to take a look at that. Shyra noticed the 4 Muladdi as soon as they appeared on the street. Her brown eyes narrowed. The elected Muladdi were a standoffish race. They didn't even like Jedi entering their district. Their home world had fallen into the Sith early in the Galactic War, and the survivors had never forgiven the Jedi for not aiding in his liberation. She could not say what might have drawn 4 of the creatures out of their enclave. She sniffed the air, but the presence of so many beings, and the burning in her blood made catching any clear scent impossible. She reached out with the force and sensed the hostility most common in the elect, but hostility was not an exclusive trait to their species. She watched the four carefully. She watched as they approached the clinic. Their robes, masks, and hoods completely hid their features. Two moved further down the street, but two stopped right in front of the clinic. The mulatty on the right reached into his robe. Shyra's eyes widened. She finally noticed something. The elect's hands were uncovered. Mulatty pilgrims were known for their dark yellow or orange skin tones. These pilgrims had green-gray skin, their hands more humanoid than a mulatty. The hands and skin of Duro. Shyra had no time to move, but she did have the force. She reached out as the Duro struck. She caught the firebomb as it left the imposter's hands. The bomb went straight up and detonated. Fire filled the sky. Like a misfired firework, sparks and flame rained down on the district. The mulatty drew their blasters, two made for the clinic entrance. Shyra leapt, her green lightsaber filling the shadows with emerald light. "Over here, Hutspan," she shouted. The Tsuk assassins turned. She grinned hungrily. "Come get some." The street exploded. Fire, blaster shots, and the hum of a lightsaber sent the beings who called it home into a panic. Court Antilles did his best to calm his patients, to see them safely out the back of the clinic in an orderly fashion. "No running," he shouted, "one by one, that's it. Take the path, and follow it down to the exit on the left." He nodded as his patients obeyed his commands, several offering thanks and prayers for his aid. The back path opened up at the entrance to the district. That would make sure that any of them didn't get caught up in the violence outside. It was the best he could do. He noticed them then, the three Duro coming up the path, pushing his patients out of the way, snarling in their native tongues. All three were armed. Court cursed and sealed the door to his clinic. It would not hold long, but he cursed again. "Damn you, Father. Damn you." He realized he had no choice. He would need to either hide here, not the smartest idea, or take his chances out on the street. He would need to walk into the light fight outside and try to reach the Jedi. He didn't like that idea much either, but the rumble of an explosive at the back door made his choice for him. Criffet, he thought. No choice. He stayed low, hoping to make it to one of the shops across the street. One of his neighbors would help, he believed, if he made it out of the district. He paused. The Jedi was engaged with his attackers. Two were down already. The remaining two, still dressed in the tattered remains of their disguises, tried to meet the Jedi on her terms, vibro swords against lightsaber. That didn't appear to be a good idea. The Jedi, Shyra. Court's eyes widened. What in the Force? As he watched, Shyra's features changed. Her humanity seemed to fade, melt away, and in its place, a far more animalistic shape. A long, powerful neck led to a long muzzle. Sharp white fangs snapped as she drew fire and pushed the remaining Duro back. The doctor blinked. The girl had literally changed her bone structure. She must have been some kind of changeling. He had heard of changelings, but had never seen one before. He had so many questions. It was impossible. Amazing. Fascinating. She swept her lightsaber before her, taking the hand of one of the assassins. The last one fell back and drew his blaster. Shyra whirled around, bringing up her blade at the last moment, deflecting the shot back at the Duro, killing him instantly with the ricochet, a ricochet that struck him in the head. He fell with a gurgle. She looked right at the doctor, her eyes flaring with gold light. "Get down," she snarled. He hit the pavement as the three Duro who had come in through the back of his clinic opened fire. She thrust out her large hand. Two of the Duros were lifted off their feet and flung back into his clinic, one crashing through a window. The third lunged at Court either to kill him or try to take him hostage. Shyra was there. Her blade flashed once. The Duro cried out as he lost his right arm. He stumbled to the pavement, crying out in pain. Court Antilles stared in a mix of horror and fascination. The Jedi creature grabbed him, pulling him to his feet. "Follow," she shouted. "More will be coming." He had no words to argue. He followed. She didn't run, not like a human would. She sheathed her blade and moved on all fours, more like a cat hound or Felix. The speeder on the left, the Jedi shouted, "Get in. I'm driving." He obeyed the sound of angry voices behind them, suddenly punctuated by blaster bolts flying over their heads. More killers, he realized, more Duro. Shyra leapt into the speeder. Her large, clawed hands worked the controls, taking them up and out of the district, barely missing two hover trucks and a luxury speeder. Court was breathless. What had just happened? She. He took a deep breath. He looked down at his normally steady hands, surgeon hands. They were shaking like leaves. "Are you injured?" the Jedi snarled. He shook his head no. As he watched her features changed again, returning to the human face that she had worn when they had first met. She shook her head. "That was too close," she spat. "I told you, you should have closed your clinic. You put all those people at risk." Once, he would have snapped back. An hour ago, he would have reminded her that it was his father that had caused this with his stupid politicking. That was how he would have responded once, but now. He just stared at the Jedi, this strange, amazing young woman that had stood between him and death. He had so many questions, but only one came to his lips at that moment. What are you?" Her eyes narrowed. Again, he got the feeling he had insulted her. "I'm a Jedi," she hissed, "and I'm sworn to keep you safe. That is all that you need to know." He nodded. Part of him wanted to argue, but the shock of their escape had left him a little tongue-tied. He was not used to this. Yes, he had seen violence in the district, but nothing like this. Never like this. Shyra piloted the speeder expertly through the lines of traffic, dodging incoming vehicles with the skill of a trained racer. She shook her head. "I need to contact my master. See what I need to do next." She looked over at him, a cursory glance, perhaps checking for injuries. "We might have to get you off-world. The Zugs have many contacts here on Coruscant." I can't leave," he said, rubbing at his glasses, realizing they had gotten smudged in their escape. "My patience. I will contact the Jedi. They will see about sending healers to check on your people. You can't help them now, you can't. More killers will come, and they will all be looking for you. Right now, you are a bigger threat to your people than their personal illnesses and injuries." Court nodded. She had a point, but. He shivered, part with fear and part with excitement. This had been the most violent thing he had ever had to deal with, personally. Shyra growled as she blended in with one of the traffic lanes. She reached for her belt. Court noticed the sheath there, the one containing for injection needles. Yes, he had seen those before, her taking injections. She pulled one out, realizing that it was damaged. She growled and pulled out the other three. Court saw that they were ruined too, likely broken during the Jedi's fight with the Duros. He might have been wrong, but he thought he heard her whimper. A worried sound that seemed strange after what he had just witnessed. She had taken down 7 armed assassins single-handed. Why were some broken syringes such a problem? "Are you sick?" he inquired. "Maybe I can help." "You can help by following my instructions from now on," she said. She took one longing look at the broken needles, and then cast them over the side of the speeder. "I'll be fine," she said. Court nodded, but he had heard that tone before, seen it in many of his patients. She was trying to convince herself that nothing was wrong, that she didn't need help. He didn't know what to say or to do. "You're a doctor," he reminded himself. "Whatever her needs, it falls to you to help her. She saved your life, and even if she hadn't, you owe it to her. You swore an oath to aid and do no harm." Despite the danger, despite her cold attitude towards him, he nodded. Whatever was wrong, he would find a way to help her. She had saved his life, and proved him wrong in the process. She was no droid. She was a brave, fierce young woman, and it was up to him to ensure that she had what she needed to complete her mission. He nodded. That he could do. He was a doctor. Shyra tried not to think about the lost medicine, what it meant. She suppressed an angry growl. He full man. Didn't he realize what had just happened? No, she realized. No, that was unfair, and beneath someone trained in the Jedi way. She took a deep breath and let it out through her nose. She tried to remain focused on the here and now, where her focus needed to be. The Zugs had sprung their trap, and they had escaped for now. She needed to contact Vay, find out what to do next. She glanced at the young man sitting next to her. She could sense his shock, but also a sense of acceptance. He was smart enough not to question, not after what had happened. She had been wrong. He may have seemed like a spoiled fool, one who thought his wealth and name protected him. Yet, that wasn't who he was. He was no fool, dedicate, yes. But he wasn't a fool. His first concerns were not for himself, but the people he aided on his street. Those who came to him for aid. That was a rare thing in one of the wealthy here on Coruscant. She had experienced enough of that during her travels with her master. Now, she could see why Vay had asked her to come. The senator may have seemed a bit brisk, but his son was quite brave, not brave in the way of a soldier, but in the way of a dedicated healer. She took another shuddering breath. He was worried about her too, she could sense it. She should have felt insulted, but she wasn't. A compassionate man that was not wrong or foolish. The fact that he was a bit on the handsome side doesn't hurt either. She ignored that thought, or rather, she tried to. Right now, she was fine. The Force was steadying her after the battle, guiding her to get her charge to safety. Once they reached safety, she would need to come up with something. All her medicine had been lost. They said that this matter would be solved quickly, but what if it wasn't? She had no medicine. She had been surviving on 2 injections a day but would need more as the burning peaked. And the burning had not peaked yet. It would get far worse before it got any better. She shivered. The doctor, Court, looked at her. "Are you hurt?" he inquired, "if you need medical help." "It's okay," she lied, trying not to think about what it would be like in a few days, how bad the burning in her blood would get. This had been a mistake, accepting this mission, but it was hers now and she had to deal with it. Dr. Antilles needed her help, and she would give it. Her will was strong, and with the Force as her ally it was stronger still. She would make it through this. It was just a couple of days. She could do this. "I'm fine," she repeated under her breath. "I'm fine." Part 3. A Doctor's Cure. The beast fell upon him with a savage snarl. Court Antilles was pushed back, striking his head, and sending stars dancing before his eyes. He looked up into mouth full of fangs and slaver, the muscle mere centimeters from his face, lips pulled back in a frightful sneer, the white teeth flashing in the dim light of the apartment. He didn't dare move. One wrong word, or movement, and those jaws would close over his throat. His neck would be torn open, and he would be dead in seconds. It was not hard to believe that this had been a bad idea, entering her room unannounced, but what choice did he have? He had not seen her in days. He had been worried something had happened. Especially after he had finished examining that last broken syringe. He understood now, or thought he did anyway. He had thought to come and help. If something had happened, if she needed medical attention, but now, he was the one in need of help. One bite and it would be over. He could feel her claws digging painfully into his shoulder. Looking up into those golden brown eyes, he feared her loss to the beast within. He had no choice. He had to try something. He spoke. Shyra. The beast snapped his jaws, but didn't release his grip. He tried again. Shyra Veal, please. He swallowed hard, feeling the hot breath on his face. I know you are in there. The beast snarled, and again, he was not intimidated. Please, he repeated. Come back to me. It had all started a week and a half ago. They had fled from Coruscant on an old tramp passenger freighter. After a long flight, they had arrived on Borlius, a world many called the gateway to the core worlds. Court had found an overkill, fleeing the planet, but Shyra remained insistent. Coruscant was too hot for them to be right now, an opinion confirmed after speaking with her Jedi Master. They would need more time to deal with the Zug family. In the meantime, though, Shyra and Court were to stay out of sight. The master promised to get back to them later. He had watched Shyra's reaction. The young Jedi's eyes looked haunted as the transmission ended. Yet she said nothing of why. She simply straightened her back and motioned for him to follow. As they had made their way down the street, he watched her. Her steps were cautious. She seemed to be trying to avoid touching anyone. She looked so uncomfortable, like she was about to jump out of her own skin. Is there anything I can do? She glanced over her shoulder. He prepared for another of her snappish retorts, but she sighed and shook head. There is nothing, she said softly. Come, the safe house isn't far. He obeyed as they headed down the walkway. He frowned slightly. He knew something about pain. He had seen it in many of the eyes of his patients, how they spoke and moved. Some of those patients had been too proud to admit their pain, or were afraid to admit it, afraid to face that they needed aid, and that something was wrong. He said nothing. Of course, there would be time to help after they were off the street, after they reached the safe house. From there, he would be able to see what she needed. From there, he could help. The apartment that the Jedi used in the city was actually part of a large warehouse. It had been purchased during the last war, Shyra had informed him, at a time when the Sith agents were watching all Jedi temples and outposts. The building was large enough to accommodate 50 Jedi and their Padawans. The offices had been converted into living spaces, used for the purpose that Shyra and Court now required. The building was surrounded by shielded fences, and more than a few keep-out signs. Anyone trying to enter without leave would be picked up on the holo-cams hidden at various points on the roof and grounds. If anyone tracked the two here, they would have time to flee, or for Shyra to prepare an appropriate welcome. The Jedi had smiled cruelly at the mention of the second part. In the mood she was in, having to welcome some uninvited and armed guests would be a form of release. Again she reached for her belt on reflex, looking for the syringes she had brought. Then, remembering them gone, cursed under her breath. Only a few more days, they had said. Shyra fought the urge to shiver. The burning was growing worse. She could feel it. Her senses becoming hyperacute, almost to the point of being maddening, her emotions only just held in check by her faith in the Jedi code. A few more days. She took a shuddering breath. Those were going to be some very long days. Once she had got the doctor settled in, she went to check on the perimeter. She moved with the sure-footedness that only came with being a skilled hunter. Hunting, she thought to herself, that helped with the burning. Hunting is what she needed now. She took her time securing the base, locating and tracking several rodents she had spotted from a distance. The tracking distracted her, gave her something to focus on besides the loud pounding of her heart and the heat turning her blood into molten lava. She chased the creatures back to their holes, not harming them. There was no need to kill something that was not a threat. For those few brief moments, she had felt at peace, the excitement of the chase distracting her from what was going on inside of her. Alas, those hunts were over far too quick. With a frustrated growl, she returned to the apartment and the doctor. She shook her head. A few days, she thought. Just a few days. The sound of a lightsaber woke him on the third day after their arrival. He dressed and looked down from the windows of the apartment, down on the warehouse floor. What he saw impressed him. Shyra Veal stood in the middle of the open floor, her blade lit as she worked through the sequences of lightsaber combat. Her eyes were closed, seeing only through the power of the Jedi, moving from move to move, not even touching the crates and equipment that dotted the ground around her. The moves, sequences, she had called them, were capable of great violence during a fight, as he had seen for himself outside his clinic. Each swing, parry, and strike moved with grace and style. The weapon was an artist's brush in her hands, her moves a swirling blend of dance and violence. She tumbled and flipped her way across the floor of the warehouse. Court watched, enraptured. She moved like water, flowed, not stepped, from move to move in a display of pure skill and style. The grace he had first seen when she arrived at his clinic given form. Beautiful. He chuckled as he realized what he was doing. You need to watch this, doctor, he warned himself. The girl had saved his life, and the two had escaped danger together. He knew what that could do. He had heard enough stories from his father. People's emotions did funny things in dangerous situations. Men and women, grateful for just being alive, felt things that were not real. That is all this is, he realized nothing more. Most would not call her beautiful. Her features would not fit into that category when it came to typical human norms. Most would look at her and call her plain. Court was not one of them. She was so graceful and strong, and he couldn't deny that he was drawn to that take-charge attitude she had shown so far. His mother had been like that too. When people were suffering, she was at her best when trying to help. She didn't accept no for an answer and pushed on through. He liked that. He admired that. Did he find the Jedi attractive? Sure, he wouldn't deny that. Her courage and compassion, not to mention his own curiosity about her origins, made her so. Again, he reminded himself about how high emotions could run in dangerous situations. He needed to take a step back. That was smarter. It was unwise to form an unhealthy attachment. Jedi, after all, had none. No, he had to remember why he was here, and why she was here. She had been assigned to protect him. It would not do to develop some schoolboy crush on her. Besides, men like him didn't attract women like Shyra, even if she wasn't a Jedi. Powerful women that had shown an interest in him backed off fast when they realized he had no interest in continuing his father's work. A doctor servicing the needy in the lower levels couldn't hold a glow lamp to someone who was being groomed to be a senator for their entire world. So, the women never stayed, and he had gotten back to work, and that would happen again, once this matter with his father's political enemies was done. Once this was over, Shyra would go back to her order, and he would go back to his clinic, hopefully. He shook his head, and went back to the computer terminal in the warehouse's office. At least he could indulge his curiosity while under lockdown. Shyra wouldn't allow him to go out. Too dangerous. At least, he could try to stay busy. He had been surprised to find the terminal was connected to the Jedi Central Database. He didn't have the clearance to access anything restrictive, but he was free to explore the general knowledge the Order had collected, and quite a collection it was. Hundreds of topics, and dozens of them dealt with medical issues on hundreds of worlds. It was a way to pass the time, if anything else. He leaned back and settled in to explore this treasure trove. He rolled up the sleeves of the tunic he was wearing. It had been made for someone much thicker-chested than him. It was a change of clothes, at least, and that was better than nothing. It was not like he had had time to pack. He had fled the clinic with nothing but the clothes on his back, that in the diagnosis tool in his lab coat. He pulled it out. It might be worth it to record some of the data here, for future reference, of course. Who knew if he might not encounter some of the problems he was reading about? Better safe than sorry that. The diagnosis tool was perfect for that. It could record an extremely large amount of data. The size of a writing stylus, it was basically a mini droid brain. Inside was contained databases for hundreds of different species throughout the known galaxy. Details about their lives, and various medical conditions known to affect them. He whirled the device between his fingers as he read through the files he had access to on the computer. He searched anything that piqued his curiosity. Among those searches, information on changeling species, discoveries of new hybrid life forms, and even once, just for curiosity's sake, he entered Shyra's name just to see what came up. It was just something to do, after all. He was curious, that was all. Just curious. A week later, he had started getting worried. 3 days earlier, Shyra had sealed herself up in one of the rooms in their apartment. Before going in, she had told him that he might not see her for a bit. The time had come for her to enter a meditation cycle, and she didn't wish to be disturbed. She brought a week's worth of ration packs with her, and enough water to sustain her. Though she doubted it was needed, but she would not be able to emerge, not until her meditations were complete. She asked him not to come in unless it was absolutely necessary. If he saw trouble on the cameras, fine, but anything else. She needed to be left alone. He had nodded, once again kicking himself. He had insulted her again the night before. It seemed that, no matter what he did, he always said something wrong. They had been talking over dinner. That is when things had started to fall apart. He had to hand it to the Jedi. When it came to safe houses, they thought of almost everything. The two had no reason to go out, risking discovery. The pantries here were well stocked, ration meals of course, but the variation in fare made it easy for someone to forget that. Food from half a dozen worlds were stored here, all to accommodate dozens of different tastes from dozens of worlds. The Jedi, being an order of many different beings and species, made such choices necessary. Who knew what a Jedi's nutritional requirements would be? Court enjoyed the experience. He had tried cuisine from 4 different worlds in as many days. The only thing that was missing had been a bit of company. Shyra had took some convincing. It had not been easy. Getting her to join him had been a chore in itself. At first, she had avoided eating with him, choosing to take her meals in her own small room. It was nothing personal, she assured him. She just preferred to eat alone. He, however, had worn her down, inviting her sweetly day after day. Finally, she had consented. He had been more than pleased. Twice she had joined him. They sat at a long conference table. At first, the two of them sitting on opposite ends, but after 3 days of meals, she moved closer. Still 4 chairs between them, but closer than she had been. He took that as another good sign. The first meal had seen him doing much of the talking. She asked him about his training and the various people he had seen during his time in the lower levels. She had been a bit surprised to hear that he preferred his life there to his time living as a senator's son. He had come to enjoy the sense of the community that they had on his street, and had done his best to be a part of that community. On the second day, the day she had sat closer, they talked about her. She talked about the Force and the forms of lightsaber combat. She also spoke about some of her missions, the worlds she had seen, and the people she had met. She had traveled far this one, and had seen things that he had not had the pleasure of seeing, not yet anyway. As they dined, he found himself enjoying himself more and more. It was nice to speak with someone so openly. There was still something between them, something she was keeping to herself, but that didn't bother him. She would tell him when she was ready. During the meal, their hands had almost touched twice. She had even smiled once, despite the hesitation he had observed over the last few days. A sense of hesitation that had been growing steadily worse. He was starting to think he was on the verge of a breakthrough when he committed a minor faux pas. He had mentioned that this was the longest he had ever cohabitated with a female, and that he was, despite the circumstances, grateful that the two of them had met. Her brown eyes had widened. He felt that she was about to say something, maybe admit that this assignment was not so bad for her. Instead, she had excused herself and made for the warehouse floor, saying something about needing to check on something. He had been left unsure of what had just happened. Had he insulted her? He didn't think so. Perhaps her species had some rule against cohabitation. Regardless, she would not hear his apology the next day, and informed him that she needed to meditate away from him alone. He couldn't help it. He knew he shouldn't be surprised. It was just a mission for her after all, but he felt a little hurt. The first day he had ignored her. The second day he resisted the urge to speak with her, remembering what she had made him promise. By the third day, hearing nothing, he was starting to grow concerned. Even more so when he found one of her needles in his old lab coat. He must have picked it up after she threw it down, before pitching the others out of the speeder. Out of curiosity, he had tested it. Using his diagnosis tool, he had analyzed what had been in the needle. What he found shocked him. The chemicals within were easily identified, and what their possible uses were showed across the tool's small holographic projector. Shyra looked nothing like the creatures described in the projections, but considering what the injections meant, it was safe to say that simply stopping the treatment was not a good idea. The tool offered him possible proxy drugs to replace the ones she had been using. Fearing for her safety, he had gone to her room, tried to speak with her, inform her about what he found. He no sooner opened the door that she lunged at him. Her form not that of the young woman he had been living with, but the beast he had seen in the streets outside his clinic. She pinned him beneath her, snarling viciously. He tried to speak with her, talk her down. It was not working. Fearing that she was lost, he begged her to come back to him. That was how it started. That was how everything changed. Come back to me? She heard the words through the haze of barely controlled emotions, her blood boiling in her veins, her being almost lost to the beast within. Through the force she reached out, not consciously, but she did it, perhaps trying to decide whether or not to kill the prey beneath her. Touching the prey's mind had an effect. She sensed no fear or panic. The prey didn't seem to realize that it was about to die, that it was about to have its throat torn out. That mental touch, it did something. The beast ceased snarling. It felt its thoughts flowing again. She blinked away the red haze and remembered the name the prey had spoken. Shyra. The beast blinked. She was Shyra. The prey, no, not the prey, Dr. Court Antilles, the man she had been assigned to protect. Dr. Antilles, Court, was staring up at her. He was scared, but not struggling or trying to escape. He knew her. He trusted her. He had control of his fear. That control, she reached out for it, needed it. She took a long breath. It came out as a growl, but no longer was it hostile. Court, his presence, it was peaceful, ordered, and soothing. It brought her back. She remembered who she was, and that was it. Shyra took control and forced the beast back down, letting it get buried in the burning. She whimpered as she let go of him, and slunk into a corner. She couldn't meet his gaze. She was ashamed. She could have hurt him, as she almost hurt her fellow Padawan years ago. Nothing had changed. She was a monster. Shyra, he asked. She shook her head, willing to change, regaining her human features. She met his gaze, with tears in her eyes. The burning, it hurt so bad. I told you to stay away, she whimpered. I could have hurt you. No, you wouldn't, he responded. You have far too much control for that. His words almost made her laugh. She might have if it hadn't been taking all of her will not to change back into her beast form and start tearing at the walls. Control. She had no control, not right now. The burning was peaking, or would be in another day or two. She had lost control, and shamed herself. She truly was an animal. What do you want? She demanded. Why are you here? I'm here to help, he answered. He held up one of the broken needles. I think I know how to help you. He recited several long medical names for drugs she had never heard of. He claimed that they had the same effect that her medicine had. All they needed to do was contact someone at the local hospital. They would be able to mix up what she needed. She shook her head. I can't go out, not in this condition, and you can't leave either. Who knows who might be watching the hospitals and other public places. The Zugs aren't foolish. They might anticipate such a move. We can't just sit here and do nothing, he said. I'm familiar with the medicine you have been taking. Though I can't figure out which species you belong to, the few that do use this medicine can't stop taking it so suddenly the pain that would cause is immense. Shyra growled lowly. What did he know, she thought. She should have been angry at his invasion of her privacy, but she wasn't. My species, he had said. He wanted to know what she was. That was interesting. She would have liked to have known too. I have no species, she informed him. His brow furrowed. What does that mean? It means that I have no species, she repeated. I'm a monster, doctor. I have no home world, no parents or people. I was not born. I was created, made by a madman, and freed by the mercy of a Jedi. She shook her head. They made a mistake in saving me. I see that now. How can you say that? He replied. Because it is true, she answered. I'm not a person, Court. I'm a thing. A monster, a creature born of the dark side. I'm a beast that shouldn't exist. A weapon of war born from Sith alchemy. I emerged from my birthing pod when, at a human standpoint, I was 10 years old. Masters Vey and Jazz took pity on me, but they shouldn't have. Court said nothing. He simply stood there and listened. She didn't like that. Why wouldn't he flee? Why couldn't he just leave her alone? Why couldn't she suffer in peace? He just stood there. She could see the blood on his shoulders, see where her claws had dug into him. He should have been running for his life. Why was he still standing there? Why? I thought you are a Jedi, he said. Again, she whimpered. I thought that too. I wanted to believe it, but maybe I'm not. Maybe I never was. She dug her claws into the stone floor. The masters couldn't bring themselves to kill me, not when they first saw me. They saw a child and tried to help. Later, when they realized that I was a weapon, too dangerous to let go, they decided to train me, bring me into their order. It was the only way to ensure the Sith didn't get me back. She rose from where she was kneeling. She advanced on him, forcing him to back up right to the wall. Her eyes flashed angrily. You wanted an answer. Well, there it is, Doctor. You have been living with the weapon of the dark side. A Sith-born monster. I tried to be more. I really did, but it is hopeless. She turned away and sank to her knees again. I'm hopeless. She waited for him to leave, perhaps tried to contact the Jedi, remove her from her position. If he knew what she was taking and why, no one would blame him. She didn't blame him. Again, she reached out with the Force, expecting to sense disgust and fear. And why not? That is all she deserved. She was no Jedi, just another dark side animal. An animal that should have been put down years ago. She sensed his emotions, that cool mind, but beneath it, she felt a warm heart, warm and compassionate. He stepped away from the wall, adjusted his glasses, and came to sit down before her. His expression, grim, determined. You are not a monster, he said flatly. Doctor, Let me finish, he ordered. Her jaw snapped shut. He pinned her with a piercing gaze. I can't imagine what you went through, growing up, knowing how you were born. Created, she repeated. One and the same, he said. As for what you said about the Jedi, about them only taking you in because you were a dangerous weapon. I don't buy it. He sighed. Shyra, a weapon does not care about people. It doesn't show restraint. A battle droid is programmed to attack, and that is it. That is a weapon. When you protected me outside the clinic, you could have killed every attacker on that street, but you didn't. There was no reason to kill, not after they had been disabled, she murmured. There you go, restraint, compassion, and a conscience. Amazing. What monster have you ever heard of that has a conscience? She didn't answer. She didn't know what to say. Still, he pushed on. You think what you are experiencing makes you less of a person. It doesn't. There are many sentient creatures out in the galaxy, Shyra. More than a few have to contend with going through mating cycles. That doesn't make them any less sentient, intelligent beings. There is one difference, she said. I'm the only one of my kind. Tarek, my creator, he never made any more. He died before he could. Anne. Yes, Court asked. She looked down. Talk to me, Shy, he said. Tell me. She looked up. Shy. He gave her a goofy grin. A term of affection, is that wrong? She snorted and lowered her head. No. He considered that a good sign. He pushed further. Please continue, he said. What did your creator never do? She sighed. She wanted to flee, to run from this room, but it felt like a floodgate had been opened. She couldn't stop. She wanted to talk. He never told me, she said. He never told me. Why? Why me? Why did he create me? Was it part of a plan? Or was this a mistake? Did the Force form me? Or was it a matter of chance and the madness of my maker? He never told me. She looked down, whimpering. I will never know. Court pursed his lips. Wow, so you have no idea why you were created. She glared. Don't make fun of me. I'm not, he replied. Once again, you are proving my point. People have been asking the same questions you have since the first star started to burn. Why am I here? Is this what it means to be alive? Is this my purpose? He started to raise his hand. He wanted to put a hand on her shoulder, maybe try to hold her, comfort her, but he pulled it back. unsure if that was a good idea. He didn't want to spook her, or worse, provoke her into biting his hand off. The beast could do that, he had no doubt, but it wasn't the beast he was talking to. It was Shyra the Jedi. Shy, the young woman. She looked up under heavily lidded eyes. You should still go. Contact the Jedi. They could send someone else. Someone better. He shook his head. I prefer to stay with the person who has protected me, who is still protecting me. She is a very special lady, and an amazing Jedi. Shyra again looked away. She couldn't meet his gaze. Had she not had fur, he might have seen her blushing. She couldn't help it. His words touched her heart. She looked up. You are crazy, she informed him. I'm a doctor. I help people. That is my purpose. She rocked back on her feet. The silence filled the room. Court suddenly felt self-conscious. Do you still want me to leave? She shook her head. No. You want me to contact someone from the Order, give you some help. Again, she shook her head. You still need help, he reminded her. This life cycle of yours, it can't be easy to deal with. It is not, she agreed. Your presence is helping. It is so calm. It is soothing. Again, that goofy grin. If not medical help, what else can I do for you? Do you have any ideas? She nodded. You can touch me? He blinked. Really? She nodded. You have been thinking about it. Yes. He nodded. Yeah. He had been thinking about it a lot. She gave him a gentle smile. You can touch me if you want. He took a shuddering breath. A week and a half of curious interest starting to come to the forefront. His hand went out and found her cheek. He brushed his fingers over her skin. He smiled. He had never felt anything like it. Her cheek, it felt like velvet. Soft, yet strangely rough and warm. She closed her eyes, enjoying the sensation, almost purring now. That was new, she thought. She had never purred a day in her life. Never, until now. She smiled as she sniffed the air. She could smell it. The scent of pheromones, interest. She growled, not in rage but in excitement. Her blood still burned, but that burning was no longer raging without cause. The fire found a direction. She liked where it was pointing. Her eyes met as, the way he was looking at her, it was, not simple affection, but something more. Deeper than mere lust, but something just as hot. She liked being looked at in such a way, especially since it was a certain young doctor doing the looking. After the last few weeks, she had started to wonder what it would be like. She would have denied it, but now that she was here, there was no denial. Now she knew. Yes, now she knew. Court dropped his hand. The young man was breathing harder now. She could hear his heartbeat, going faster and faster. Her senses were no longer focused on random noises, no longer trying to drive her mad. They were focused on one thing. The young man standing before her. She rose as well, putting her large paws into his hands. He laughed nervously. So, what happens now? Now, she said in a husky voice, you treat me, doctor. You may be the only one that can. He let her lead the way, out of the room that she had sealed herself in, and towards his part of the apartment. Towards his bed. She looked down, shyly, ironically enough. She knew this would help, could feel it in every fiber of her being. For the longest time, she had feared that no one would see her the way that Court was looking at her now. She was so glad that she had been wrong. They stood before the bed. She pulled him closer, their bodies touching. She had let go of her fear, enjoying the sensation of being close to this man. Wanting to be with him? Wanting to be alive. He nervously took off his glasses and set them down on the nightstand. What now, dear Jedi? He asked. She gently opened his shirt, smelling the male scent of him, the scent of clean skin, and building passion sweat. He leaned in and kissed her, first on the forehead, and then on the lips. She kissed him back. The burning rose up again, trying to blind her and make her bite. She held it in check. She wanted more than aggression, more than blood. She wanted him. He gently guided her arms over her head and pulled off her Jedi tunic. She wore nothing beneath it. His hand ran down her chest. He enjoyed the feel of warm velvet-like skin on his fingertips. She kissed him again. She felt his hands undoing her belt, and then, gently pulling down her leggings. She didn't resist. Are you sure about this? He panted. I don't want to take advantage of you. You aren't, she promised. I want this. Please, don't back away. He nodded as she lay back on his bed. He sat down, pulling down his pants. She sat up and kissed his neck, nuzzling his shoulder. Lay with me, she growled. Come to me. He obeyed, let her pull him down so that she could be on top. Sounds like you need a doctor, he smirked. She whimpered as they moved against each other. Yes, she moaned. I do. She threw back her head, and the beast came out in full. Her head changed, her muzzle pointed to the sky. Ahoo! Her howl filled the room. It didn't scare him. If anything, it only excited him more. He wanted more. He would give her more. She didn't hurt him. Her claws left red marks on his skin, but that was it. She would never hurt him, not permanently anyway. Part of him wondered what the Jedi would think of this, and then just as quickly, he realized he didn't care. She needed this. It would be done. Court didn't resist. He held her as they made love, his hands going from her hips to her breast, and back again. He had wanted this for some time, and now that it was here, he had no words. There was only desire. Desire and heat. Enjoying the feel of her skin on his fingers, the taste of her flesh on his tongue. He didn't try to stop. She needed this, and much to his pleasure. So did he. Not bad, Doc, he thought to himself as he seized her in his arms, kissing his way down her shoulders and to her breast. He was growling now, and as he looked into her eyes, he saw she approved. Two loving animals, two people lost in each other. A sweet catharsis. A most interesting treatment. He sighed as he found his release, as she howled anew. Ahoo! A doctor's cure indeed. Part 4. A beginning's end. I've not been here since I was 8. Court and Tilly sat on one of the many benches that dotted the main hall of the Galactic Senate building. As was typical for this time of day, hundreds of beings made their way back and forth. The Senate was not in session right now, but that didn't mean that the work had stopped. Aides still had to look up information for their respective senators. Lobbyists were placing calls on this representative or that, eager to bend an ear before the next session, hoping to sway votes for this cause or that. The young doctor didn't envy any who chose to work in these halls. As a doctor, he had to do bloody work from time to time, but always in a way that helped someone, something he took pride in. What happened here, things were not always so cut and dried. Helping someone here could hinder the dreams of entire worlds. It was why he was glad he chose to stay out of it. Men like his father might have enjoyed the game, but not him. No, he would be much happier helping those in need, and now, thanks to Shyra Veal. The young man smiled. Now he knew how best to do that. After 2 full months of hiding, they had finally received the all-clear signal from Shyra's Jedi Master. Finally, Court could come out of hiding and return home. He did so with mixed feelings. Yes, it would be good not to have to look over his shoulder, but it also meant saying goodbye to Shy. That was not easy. No, it was not easy at all. He doubted that Raxus Antilles, his father, would understand that. The senator had actually sent a ship, something that had surprised both of them, but perhaps shouldn't have. He had been the reason why Court had needed Shyra's protection and needed to go into hiding in the first place. Something that Court would have thanked him for, much to his surprise. The two had accepted his offer with humility and had returned to Coruscant. Raxus Antilles had summoned his son as soon as they arrived at the spaceport, his people waiting to take them to the Senate building. Court, who understood his father, guessed why. His father's motives were clear, both to check up on him, make sure that he had come through the recent ordeal unscathed, and to see if his son had learned from this experience. The senator had hoped that recent dangers would finally change his son's mind, set him back on the course that his father felt was best. He still hoped that his son would take up his mantle. He still wanted to start grooming the young man to be his successor. Court's mind had changed, yes, but not in the way that his father would have hoped. Living close to a Jedi for 2 months had given him a new outlook, and had given him a chance to come up with a new plan. He had informed his father of this, and, well, that had not gone very well. His father, the great Raxus Antilles, thought it was a horrible idea, that his son was still wasting his potential. Court didn't care. Borlius was not far from the core, but it had been far enough to give the young doctor some perspective. A little over a week before they had gotten the call that it was safe to return, he and Shyra had gone out one night. A small trip that had changed, well, everything. It was risky, the Jedi agreed, but even she had wanted to get out of the safe house. Stay close to me, she warned. If we encounter trouble, stay hidden, and let me deal with it. Not a problem, Shy, he said. I'll be your shadow. She smirked. They had gotten closer than that in the past few months, that was for sure. It had been nice to get out. They got a chance to see a bit of the city. Shyra was all business, of course, but that was her task. He knew that there was far more to her than that. They had spent many meals together at this point. They had talked of many things. She had spoken much about her life as a Jedi, her ideals, her training, and even explained the workings of and skills necessary to use the lightsaber. He had tried meditation and taught her things about medicine, things that might help in her work. The burning in her blood had passed 2 days after their first night together. A night he would remember for the rest of his life. He had wanted it, and she had needed it. On that, they had both agreed. They had no regrets. The girl felt no shame for what had happened, and she didn't think he had taken advantage of her, praised the Force. As for Court, well, to say he had enjoyed the experience was an understatement. The feel of her skin, the taste of it, it had filled him with a desire he had never experienced before. He had fallen upon her hungrily. He had barely recognized himself. He wondered if she had given off some pheromones, something that had increased his desires and increased his sense of pleasure. If so, he was a lucky man. The experience had been incredible. As they had laid together after he had smiled, chuckled to himself. What? She had asked. Nothing, he replied. Something amuses you? Tell me, she had inquired. He smirked. I was just thinking that, well, yeah. Well, I'm just grateful that I wasn't allergic to your fur. She glared at him, but there was no heat in it. Finally, she smiled, even giggled. Lucky you. He leaned in and kissed her lips. She hit him with a pillow. They playfully struggled with each other, playfulness that turned into another round of kissing, and then they made love again. It had been nice. Shy. She was so perfect. He had not been with a woman in a while, and his attraction for her had not simply been a trick of his emotions. It wasn't simply that they had come through danger together and lashed onto the first person they saw in lust. He had come to respect Shyra Veal, respect, and desire her. He stopped just short of saying the one word that he couldn't say. She had warned him not to say it. Desire was enough for now? Shy, she had fulfilled those desires, most excellently. Shy she was. He almost didn't have any words. The girl was as fierce in the bed as she was in combat. It had been amazing. Yet, it was more than just sex. They had grown close, become friendly. He would miss her when they parted ways. As they had wandered, they had avoided most of the major population center. Yet, it had been nice, the two of them able to be out together. It made Court feel younger than he had in years. Traveling with this Jedi girl on his arm, a girl he desired so deeply. Yet, even that journey had had a purpose. They had come across a base outside the city, a work site for the Galactic Medical Corps. A sickness had taken root at one of the outlying settlements, threatening the work of the local farmers. It was a foul sickness, and the people had needed help. The doctors had descended, to make sure that it spread no farther than the fields outside the capital city. Court had heard of the GMC, of course, who hadn't? He and Shyra had pitched in. She did know some things about force healing, and Court's experiences in the lower levels of the Coruscant proved valuable in helping some of the off-world species that had been working in the farming settlement. The doctor in charge was impressed. He had asked after Court before the two had left, inquiring what he was doing on Borlius, and asked if he was looking for something more permanent. Court could not tell the man everything, not right then. They had still been under threat at that time. Shyra had vouched for the doctor, though. Using the Force, she sensed no deception in him. When he could leave the protection of his Jedi guard, he would give the offer some serious consideration. As to the danger of going out, he and Shyra did encounter a Duro during their time aiding the village. The man was an agent of the Zug family that was pursuing them, a highly placed one, given his clothes and the expensive nature of his weapons. He had taken ill while staying in the settlement, watching the farms for any sign of their target. Shyra had tended to him, not with violence, but with the simple command of the Force. You have not seen those you hunt not here, and not in the city. You think this whole thing is a waste of time. You should shift your search elsewhere. The doctor and the Jedi are not here. Those 3 simple phrases were all it took. The two had returned to their safe house. Through the Force, Shyra could sense the danger had moved on, mostly. They still had to be careful, but it meant their last week together had been far less restrictive than the previous ones. Then had come the all clear from Shyra's master. The danger had passed. The two could come home. He searched the Grand Hall now, looking for Shyra and her master. They had been sent to his father to offer their final report. Court pursed his lips. He was not sure what Shyra would tell them, though he couldn't say that he would change anything that had happened. Anything. He had already contacted the GMC recruiter, offering his services. His clinic here on Coruscant had been taken over by another doctor, one he trusted, a former classmate of his, and another friend of his mother's. She would see that his patients got the care they deserved. It would take a bit of time to be accepted. It had been that way with him too, but he assured her that it was possible. She simply had to be patient. All would be well. She would find that working down level was not as bad as the people up here thought. There was camaraderie, and friendship was possible. He smiled. He saw her. Shyra made her way through the crowd, clad in the tan and cream-colored robes of her order. At her side, the childlike Jedi Master, the one he had learned was named Ve-Elo. He rose and bowed to both of them. Master Ve, he said, Jedi Shyra, may the Force be with you. Shyra smiled at the greeting she had taught him. Ve laughed, a sweet musical giggle. And with you, young man, she said with a slight bow, I trust we have not kept you too long. He looked at Shyra again. She bowed her head, again happy for the soft fur on her face, the fur that mostly hid her blush. He didn't mind waiting for her. Had he been able, he might have waited forever. I do hope that my father wasn't too hard on you, either of you, Court said. I know how he is. He can be a bit much. Shyra smirked. That was an understatement. Raxus Antilles had not been happy to hear that his son intended to join the GMC. He had questioned Shyra about it, which she had responded truthfully. Your son is a man grown, senator. He has made his choice to serve others and through them the Force. She had smiled at the senator. Such a decision should be respected and commended. They had looked at her then, no doubt surprised by her response. Shyra had been known to be a bit more harsh in her words in the past. Several times, during her training, they had needed to step in and smooth over matters when Shyra had been less tactful than she should have been. Speaking with a more delicate tone had been a problem for her in the past. That was no longer a problem for her. Her time with Court had taught her the value of diplomacy. He understood his father's world. He just chose not to live in it. She respected that, and so should the senator. My Padawan is not wrong, Senator, they added. You have raised a brave young man, brave and selfless. You should be proud. The older man sighed and shook his head. I am, he admitted, if only the boy was a bit less stubborn. Then he wouldn't be your son, Rax, they said with another musical laugh. In the end, the senator had to agree. Court was court. That was all he would ever be. Shyra was fine with that. She liked him just the way he was. Her mind drifted back over their 2 months together, what they had shared. It had changed her for the better. She was certain of that. She no longer saw herself as a weapon or a monster. When she returned to Tython, she intended to speak with the Jedi archivist. She wished to enter herself into the Jedi records as a species. She would be a Veal. True, she was a species of one, but that was fine. She was a person, a creature of sentience and self-determination. She wished for the records of the Order to show that. She wanted to share what she had discovered. She was not a monster, and she was more than just a Jedi. She was a person. Court had proven that. During their time together, she had asked for him to examine her on a scientific level to determine exactly what she was, as far as he was able to. She had always feared such testing, feared what they might show. No longer. She wanted to know. The results had been intriguing. Her DNA was most interesting, he agreed. Through the Force she could turn certain genetic traits on and off, which gave her the shapeshifting ability that she possessed. Of course, there was another side effect of those abilities, one that had not been so positive. Despite appearing near human, she was not. From a genetic standpoint, it was highly unlikely she would ever be able to reproduce. Everything fit right between her and her lover, but their genes were not compatible enough to produce offspring, not with a human, or any other species similar to her own. It seemed that when the time came, when she finally became one with the Force, all that she was as a living being would be lost, forever. The thought saddened her, surprisingly, but in Jedi fashion, she accepted the results. Perhaps it was for the best that she would be the last of her kind. She was committed to the light, but who could say her descendants would share her belief? What if one of them grew curious about the dark side, wished to explore what Tarek had created, and what it meant to use the dark side? A frightening thought. The thought of a Sith with her powers, the very idea of it disturbed her. After the tests were concluded, Kor came to her, as she stared out the window lost in thought. He came up behind her and wrapped her in his arms. "Are you okay?" he asked. She nodded. "I never thought of the possibility of reproducing," she confessed. "I feared that I would never find a male who would want to try such a thing with me." He leaned in, nuzzling her neck. Though she was still another 2 weeks from her next burning cycle, she felt a heat inside her. It was there, in the pit of her stomach. A heat that threatened to grow. She held it in check. She was not an animal after all. "Some males might be up the challenge," he admitted. "I could see raising a few pups like you. They would be a handful, I'm sure, but..." He kissed the tip of one of her pointed ears. "I think their mom would have made sure they learned to make the right choices." Shyra smiled. To be a wife, a mate, a mom. What would that be like? Caring for a litter of younglings. Little ones born with her fierce skills, but quartz eyes and slender build. The thought had made her smile. It would have been a challenge, but sometimes the Force had other plans. She was a Jedi. The family thing, that was not for her. It likely never would have been. A shame. Expected, yes, but a shame. The thought of what might have been came back to her again, especially now, standing with Vay and Cord in the Senate building. Standing here at the end, the moment she and he would part. That parting saddened her, but she remained strong. Goodbye was not always forever. She would not let it be, Force willing. They would see each other again. She smiled at him, this young man that had given her so much. He had not thought himself deserving of her affection, not at first. She had been happy to show him that he was wrong. Court, he would have been an agreeable mate. Had the Jedi still accepted such things. Master Vay had told her about those times, back when the Jedi still had a home world, back on Asas. Their families had lived together, took care of each other, while the Jedi and their families traveled the galaxy, keeping it safe. Even as peaceful Asas sheltered the families of the Jedi. That had ended with the Great Sith War. It had ended with the Dark Lord, with Exar Kun. It had all fallen away in a flash of fire and vengeance. So, you still intend to leave Coruscant? They said to Court, bringing her back to the here and now. You still intend to join the GMC? The doctor nodded. I can do some good out there, I'm certain. Plus, when I come into my trust in 3 months, I will be able to truly aid the group. Credits can't buy happiness, but they can save lives when invested correctly. They smiled. It sounds that you will be true force for good, Dr. Antilles. He gave her that goofy grin that Shyra had come to love. She blinked. Love. Yes, she thought to herself. She loved that grin. She loved him. She always would. He looked at her, his smile turning sad. He reached out, touching her paws, taking them in his hands. Then he let them go. He stepped back. He bowed his head shyly. I am going to miss you, girl. She suppressed a whimper. She would not cry, not here. Not in front of her master. Besides, this was not the end. She tried to focus on their time together. She treasured those memories, even though she couldn't tell her fellows about. No, this was not the end. It was merely the end of the beginning. She threw her caution to the wind. She stepped forward and leaned in as she had done so many times during their months together. She leaned and nuzzled his face. He closed his eyes. He pressed his nose to her skin, enjoying her scent and the feel of her fur. Again, she felt a sense of the burning, but with it came the memory of his touch, their time together, not just in bed, but simply being there for each other. She would not forget. We will meet again, she growled. I know, he said. You can't get rid of me that easily. I would hope not, she said, stepping back, and bowing like a proper Jedi. May the Force be with you, Court Antilles. He returned the bow. And with you, Shy. She smiled. Shy. Yes. To him, she would always be shy. She liked that? She liked that very much. Shyra piloted the speeder while Vay sat next to her. The two Jedi rode in a comfortable silence. Shyra glanced over, wondering what her master thought of her. No doubt she had realized now what had occurred during her 2 months of being in hiding with Court. She wondered what Vay would tell the council and how they would react. Would they see her surrender to the boy as a failure? It didn't feel that way to her. She felt calmer than she ever had. She would no longer fear the burning in her blood. Even if she could not go to Court to soothe it, to speak with him would be enough to keep her focused. She would no longer have to fear the beast. She had tamed it. It was a part of her. You did well, my student, Vay said. Shyra snorted. Did I, master, she said. You realize what happened between me and Court? Yes, her master replied. It was not hard to see. The young Jedi winced. What will you tell the council? I will tell them that the time has come to end your apprenticeship. You have proven to me that you are ready. Protecting the senator's son should be your final trial. You passed the test of skill when you saved him from the Zugs. You endured your trial of the flesh by facing your burning of blood, and still did your duty. But I gave in to my desires. We became lovers. He and I and we. Yes, but you still chose to remain with the Order. You will no doubt seek him out again. Your blood will call, and he will answer, but you remain true to the code. As I said, you proved yourself. Well done. Shyra smiled. Thank you, Master. Vay smiled. As for your trial of the spirit, I can sense that you passed that too, by letting go of your fears, by accepting what you are. You have passed the final test. You deserve to be called a Jedi Knight. The dark side, Darth Tarek, these no longer have any hold over you. Vay reached out and touched the Padawan braid in her student's hair. This will be removed when we reach Tython. It is time. Well done, young Jedi. Shyra beamed. Thank you, my master. It is what you deserve, Shyra. I'm proud of you. Shyra felt a surge of pride tempered with a Jedi humility. A Jedi Knight. Yes, she could be that. She looked at her master. Another realization hit her. I am no longer your student. True, Vay answered. What will happen now? What will you do? Go back to your seclusion? They frowned. No. I have sensed something, child. Something that I hoped never to feel again. Shyra's brow furrowed. What she sensed in her master shocked her. Fear. Fear, but determination. Agents of the old Sith Brotherhood have returned and done the impossible, Shyra. They have brought back my master's killer. They looked at her. Exar Kun is back, apprentice. I can sense him. Shyra's eyes widened. The Order must gather, she exclaimed, if Kun is back, if he joins the Sith Empire. He doesn't know who he is, not yet. Physically he is Kun, but mentally, the spirit and the body are not joined. He is just a child, a boy, and the boy doesn't know that he is a Dark Lord returned. I sense it, but if we ignore this. Shyra's eyes narrowed, she growled. I will stand with you, master. I know you would, she replied, but this is my battle and my burden. Our friends will need your aid in the coming months. Finn, Jazz, even that boy Timon, the one that Finn has agreed to train. Shyra looked stricken. She didn't like the sound of this not one bit. Exar Kun had been a terror. If the Sith had created a new body for him, if they found his spirit in the madness beyond death. She could only guess how the Sith Empire would react. They were rudderless since the death of their emperor and the final fall of Revan. Kun Reborn could give them what they needed, a leader to rally around. If that happened, you should not face this threat alone, my master. Yet, I must. For Vado Bas and for Audaner, and every other Jedi slain by that madman, and those we lost when Asus fell. They sighed, and touched the hilt of her lightsaber. I never got to face Kun. Our blades never met. Vado said he was the best of us, and his actions that day in the Senate, when he ended Vado's life. They sighed. I was there, over the forests of Yavin 4. I joined myself to the meld that stopped Kun's spirit from escaping his fate. I was there when we drove the shadow back down to that wild moon. Shyra winced. For her, those stories were just that, stories. For they were memories, many of them still painful. The ageless Jedi's mouth was set in a grim line. I will face him, and I will stop him. Shyra whimpered. Will you heal him, this boy, the one who doesn't know who he is? I don't want to, they admitted, but he is a very real threat. If he finds the dark side, if he realizes who and what he is. The Jedi Master's eyes narrowed. I will do what I must. Shyra nodded. She understood, but... a boy. If he didn't know what he was. But still, the chance if Exar Kun truly returned. No. They was right. Shyra would trust her master. All thought of court and knighting vanished in that moment. She understood. They had to do this. She would need to do what was necessary. She would do what she must. For light. For the Jedi. The Dark Child. Dien was a beautiful world. That was Veilo's first thought as she stepped down from her ship. She sniffed the air and reached out with the Force. A beautiful world, yes, but very dangerous as well, deceptively dangerous. Her mouth became a grim line. The perfect world to hide him. Though it had been discovered some 60 years ago, colonization efforts had been slow. Though lush and green and possessing a wet, temperate climate, Dien had no real resources to speak of, no, or chemicals to mine, nothing of note to feed corporate expansion or enrich the wealthy. Not enough to attract the colonial officers back then, during the so-called Age of Peace and Expansion. Then had come the Sith return to Corbin, and for a time, colonization efforts had shut down. All resources had been shunted to push the invaders back. Decades of war that had shook the galaxy to its core, and in almost 1,000 years of peace. The coming of Cold War changed Dien's fate. The Treaty of Coruscant forced the Republic to look out again, looking to expand, and replace the worlds lost to the Sith by the treaty. This place was one of them, a paradise world for humans to grow and multiply, replenishing the ranks after years of brutal losses. The colonials had moved too fast. They hadn't really taken the time to get to know the world, and cursory scans had missed some of the planet's less positive traits. They could feel those traits now, trying to burrow into her cells. A fierce microbial life form that infested in the lungs and brain, causing violent rages and insanity in fully developed human minds. Thought not human herself, she could feel the creatures entering her lungs. They filled the air of this world. She called upon the force and easily dispelled them. Once they were gone, she took another deep breath, cocooning herself in the light, protecting herself from further attack. Yes, on the surface, to a human, this world looked perfect, and was just out of the way enough that the more devious might think it beneath the notice of those who were in power. That is why they had come here, she realized. To raise him in secret. Why she had come here now. It had taken months of searching, meditating on the Force, and chasing leads and ghosts. The people she sought, survivors of the Sith cult known as the Sith Brotherhood, were understandably skittish. The return of the Sith Empire on Korriban had changed the lives of these vile sects. Many dark side cults had their own philosophies and agendas. The Imperial Sith limited those beliefs, tried to reabsorb them into their ranks, and, failing that, exterminated any dark side practitioner that might oppose them. The Sith Brotherhood had been formed almost 3 centuries ago by Exar Kun and his apprentice Ulic Queldroma. A blending of Krath philosophies and old Sith Empire ideology. It had attempted to undo what the Great Hyperspace War had done and restore the so-called Golden Age of the Sith. The cult had mostly been wiped out after Exar Kun's defeat, but several of his members remained. One had even tried to take over the Jedi Order some 20-something years after the war ended. A retainer who called himself Darth Hayes, or something to that effect, who perished at the hands of a Jedi hero Zane Carrick. They smiled. She had met Zane only briefly, a good boy who grew into a good man. She shook her head. It was a shame that humans were so short-lived. She could have used his help right now. The cultists she sought today were not Force-sensitive themselves, but they had dedicated their lives to restoring one who was. The survivors of the Brotherhood had come to revere Exar Kun as a prophet, and sought his return with a zealousness that even went beyond the capabilities of the modern Sith. They had heard rumors that they had succeeded in a way. A child had been born almost 13 years ago. One conceived using blood samples stolen from the long-lost enclave on Dantooine. Exar Kun had trained there as a Padawan, and had sought medical attention there more than once. The Sith acolytes had hidden that blood away, preserved it for centuries. These cultists were too weak to be Dark Lords themselves, but they could understand Sith texts, and their limited power could use Sith alchemy. She had traced the last of them, these fanatics here. If what she was feeling was true, if they had not prepared themselves, they were likely dead as well. Of course, the microbes didn't kill everyone on this world. Final reports, before the colony fell, suggested that the children were unaffected by what was happening. The last one dated 6 years ago. The boy would have been 7, protected by the development of his own body. They pursed her lips and thought. Common wisdom suggested that she, and the Jedi, should have left this world alone. If Exar Kun's new body was here, it would die when it reached maturity, but she couldn't risk it. She couldn't let it go. So many friends had died back then, her own master, Audin murdered by Kun himself. She could not risk the potential Dark Lord surviving, thriving on an unknown world. She couldn't risk him escaping and returning to a galaxy at war. A war where the dark side offered great power to those who sought to rule. No, she couldn't risk it, and she wouldn't. She pulled up the hood of her Jedi robe. She began walking, following the Force. She reached out with her senses. If he is here, she thought grimly, her hand drifting to her lightsaber. I will find him. She saw the results of the microbes' attacks as she made her way towards the doomed colony. Unburied bones littered the ground where they fell. Many skeletons mixed, signs that these people had died tearing at each other like animals. Faye shook her head. Could the new Kun feel these losses? Did he revel in the destruction around him? If so, she might already be too late. She shook her head. Whatever happened, she was prepared. Her hand again rested on the hilt of her lightsaber. I'm ready, she thought. I will do what I must. The clan was about to die. Zahar heard the cries of battle. The Icy clan's warriors had made it through the blockade, hungry to claim the last resources of the Ud. Ready to claim the last of the Litloons for their own. Zahar frowned as he looked down at his spear. He was 13, and had only just taken the place of leader. Javin, their previous leader, had come down with the madness, as all did as they got past the age of 15. Those warriors had needed to kill him, to protect themselves and the remaining Litloons. Zahar had not wanted to do it. Javin had always protected him, he had loved him like a brother. It had felt bad to end him. He looked around him at the remaining warriors of their small clan. A blend of 10 and 8-year-olds. Most had no memory of what came before they had been Litloons when the change had come over the adults, and they had butchered each other. Zahar shook his head. They had all seen things that no youngling should ever have to see. Having to hide from their parents and guardians. They had needed to hide and watch everyone go mad. Zahar. The boy looked down and tried to put on a brave smile. Hi, Amy. The girl smiled, 5 years old. She had been one of the last children born in the colony before its final collapse. Zahar and the other had protected her since then. Javin, and before him Bo, the leaders of their clan, had tasked Zahar with protecting her. She looked at him like he was her brother, even though they had no blood between them. Are we gonna be okay, Zahar? The child asked. He tried not to think of the Icy outside. They would show no mercy in claiming what was here. Javin had kept the peace these last 2 years, but with his end, and the end of 5 others of their best, lost to the madness. No, would fight, but they wouldn't win. Not today. He would probably die. He didn't want to, but he would for Amy. He would try for her and the other Litlians. We will be okay, he lied. Go back with the others. We will be back to get you when this is done. The girl nodded and left. Zahar frowned, hated that he had lied to her, but what choice did he have? There were no fighters among the Litloons. They were all 6 years old and under. A few babies had been born. Some of the older kids, 15 or 16, had managed to have kids before they fell completely to the madness. The medical droids that it had taken from the hospital aided in those births and helped watch over the Litloons. Icy wanted them too. The food, the water, everything. They had already wiped out the Blue and Ray clans and absorbed their younger members. Now Icy was stronger than Ud. This fight, it would likely be their last. Zahar was not hopeful. He was 13, soon, he would begin to get the shakes, and then, a year or 2 on, he would need to be ended too. It wasn't right, and it wasn't fair, but that was the way things were. He sighed. He heard banging in the old courtyard. The Icy were stripping away the last of the barricades. They would be in here soon. He looked over his fellow fighters. 12 strong, and the small atrium would shield them somewhat. Icy would not be able to surround and swarm them. That gave it a small edge, but it was one that he would take. Zar's eyes narrowed as he raised his blade. He thought of father and of what he taught him. Be brave, Zahar, and never back down from a fight. Be like the prophet. Be like Exar Kun. Zahar nodded. He ran his hand through his long black hair and prepared himself. They would fight. They were ready. He cried out a battle challenge. For Ud. She had felt the violence as soon as she entered the ruined colony. Vay's eyes narrowed. She used the Force to enhance her speed and stealth. She moved like a shadow through the ruined streets and passed by destroyed vehicles. The Force drew her to an old food court structure. It was surrounded by no less than 40 teens and older children, screaming rage as they tore down the defenses near the door. Vay was horrified. A children's war, she realized, survivors of this catastrophe, fighting over the scraps of this world. She sighed. Is this your doing, XR? Are you leading these poor souls? Stealing their innocence? She didn't sense the dark side among them, not strongly as it would be in a young adept. She did sense courage and grim determination within the structure, those living there, holding the line. They were preparing to make a last stand. They wouldn't allow it. This fighting, it would end. She drew her lightsaber and marched forward. Whatever the dark side had wrought on this world, it was done. A Jedi had come. This war was over. Something had changed. Zahar felt it, though he wasn't sure exactly what it was. The IC attack had been smaller than expected, their forces divided. Only 8 had entered the Uz home, and they were slow to advance. They held back, waiting for the rest of their forces. Those forces didn't come. Outside he could hear cries of anger and shrieks of fear, and beneath that, a strange hum. Zahar shook his head. There was a roaring in his ears, like waves crashing against a shoreline. He remembered that sound from holos his mom had once watched. This felt different though, louder, and only in his head. It was then that he saw her. A single figure in a brown robe, wielding a bar of emerald green light. Zar's blood ran cold. His parents had spoken of such beings. Jedi. They snatched babies and destroyed the Prophet's followers, stopped him from saving the galaxy. Zahar watched as the IC tried to engage her. She stopped 5 with a wave of a hand, freezing them in place. 3 more she threw back with a simple upraised palm. The green blade wove back and forth, chopping through axe and spear. None could touch her. None. Finally, the IC broke. They ran screaming from the field, out through the doors, and into the night. Quiet descended on the Uz home, only the sound of breathing and hum of the Jedi's weapon. Zahar was frightened. Had the Jedi come to harm the Litloons? No. No. He wouldn't let that happen. Yet, did they have the strength to it? His strongest fighters, Bo-Jay and Rickon, were at his side. Maybe they could. Before he could order a charge and attempt to kill the Jedi, he heard a voice behind him. Zahar. Amy, get back. The little girl ran to him. He dropped his spear, took her into his arms. It's over. Are we safe? Zahar held her as he looked at the Jedi. He didn't know. He shook his head. He wasn't sure. It's really him. They recognized him immediately. His face had been burned into her memory. Exar Kun. He lived again. It was a face of a boy, but the features were the same, the nose, the mouth, the eyes. She frowned. Wait. The eyes were different. Where was the cold arrogance that had once burned there? Where was the curl of the lip, that sneer that had defined Vado's old apprentice? The boy didn't have it. They might have advanced on him if not for the little girl. Exar threw down his weapon and held her, trying to push her behind him. Again, they didn't know what to say. Why was he not ordering his followers to attack her, perhaps even fling the girl at her as he fled? The boy didn't do anything like that. He stayed where he was, holding the child. She was scared. They could sense it. The boy was scared too. Exar Kun was afraid. She didn't know what to make of it, any of it. Where was the Sith she had sought out? Where was her master's killer? The boy wasn't him. He had his face, but it wasn't him. She reached out with the Force. She could sense the boy, his Force potential very high. She sensed courage and caution. She sensed fear, but it was contained. He had it under control. The other children looked upon him. She sensed trust. She sensed loyalty. And he was loyal to them. Impossible. She had come here to destroy a Sith threat, to stop it in its infancy. She tried to look into the future, but possible futures swirled around like a hurricane, and in that moment, she saw him. He sat in his favorite chair, his robes of royal purple covering her aged form. Her master, she saw Audiobook. He looked upon her with tired eyes. What shall you do now, Padawan? He asked. I don't know. The long-dead Jedi made a snuffling sound, a sound of amusement for him. She remembered it well. He met her gaze. You are no executioner, Vey. You should not have tried to become one. Hearing him say that, hearing his words, Vey Ilo, one of the oldest living Jedi masters, felt shame. Her master was not wrong. She had come here to kill a Sith. No, not a Sith. A boy with the potential to become a Sith, or a Jedi, given the opportunity. She had come here to commit murder. She looked into her master's eyes. He had been murdered by Kun. She knew it to be true. Yet, there was no anger in him, only a sad acceptance and curiosity. He wondered what his apprentice would do. She could kill XR, but she would have to kill the rest of these children too. She didn't want that. She didn't want to see fear or pain in the little girl's eyes, the girl that XR was holding. She could almost feel her master's gnarled hand on her shoulder. You came here to end a threat, Vey. So end it. The old master stepped back and towered over her, as he had done in life. Tell me, Padawan, what shall you do? I shall do as I must, master, she replied. I will do as I must. Zahar watched her, this Jedi, this monster. Yet, he didn't sense a monster. He sensed a being as confused and as scared as he. Zahar let go of Amy. He gently guided her behind him. He didn't reach for his weapon. He didn't wish to provoke it. He held up his hands. I am Zahar, he called out. I speak for the clan. The Jedi nodded and deactivated her weapon. The emerald light vanished into her hand with a hiss. The Jedi removed it, her hood. Zahar stifled a gasp. He expected a monster, some sort of wither thing from his nightmares. The Jedi's face was young, maybe a few years older than he, but the eyes. He blinked. The eyes seemed ageless, and now they were focused on him. The Jedi bowed. I am Vey Ilo of the Jedi Order. She gave him a gentle smile. I would like to help, if I can. Zahar was not sure how to answer. He had been told. He shook his head. Those things had been told to him years ago. He had not really understood, only felt fear. He was not a Little-loon now. He was the leader of this clan. He would not show fear. He would not give in to fear. Whoever this Veilo was, she was not a monster. He looked past her, past the broken barricades. He sighed. They will return, the IC, he said. He shook his head. We will not survive another attack. Then you should not remain here, Vey answered, turning. I have a ship nearby. How many are you now? Zahar almost didn't answer, but what did it matter now? 28 of us, including 2 infants. Vey nodded. My ship can't hold that many. This world, it is sick. I can't take you to a new one, where you don't have to worry about fighting over scraps, a place where you can be safe. Vey put her hands into the sleeves of her robe. I will not force you, any of you, but if you wish to come to safety, I promise to take any and all who will come. Zahar looked at his friends, Bojaz and Rickon met his gaze and nodded. They knew about ships and the Republic, but had not seen one in years. If there was a chance. Zahar looked at the Jedi. He didn't really trust her, but she wasn't lying. He could sense when someone lied. We need to gather the Little-loons, he said. When that is done, we will come. Vey bowed again. I will stand guard here. Make sure you are not attacked again. Zahar nodded. He didn't say thank you. He didn't need to. She, the Jedi, already knew. He was curious. He had seen what she had done. It had been amazing. Could she teach him to do those things? He was afraid to ask. Maybe when the clan was safe, he would talk to her. Maybe he could ask her. Maybe, he thought. Maybe. Vey watched as the boy led his people back to gather their things. Again, she could almost sense her master's presence. His approval. She was no killer. She should not have tried to be. She was, and had been for centuries, a teacher. In the last 50 years, she had trained 2 students she was proud of. Could she make it 3? She would not offer her teachings to a Sith, but the boy, Zahar, he was not a Sith. He was not XR Kun. He was potential, raw, and untapped. She could help him. She would help him. She wasn't a murderer. She couldn't kill him, but she could teach him. She could show him a better path. Take the weapon of the enemy and make it, not a weapon, but a friend. She had done it once with her last apprentice. She could do it again. It would be risky. The council would not agree, but what choice did she have? She wouldn't kill him, and she wouldn't risk the Sith finding him. No, this was the way. If he asked her, she would teach him. She would do what Vado had failed to do. She would make things right. The boy would become a Jedi. If he asked. She smiled to herself. All he needed to do was ask. She was ready. The only question was he.